Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers
with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good dump.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family.
I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
And we are back for another episode. Box Office Bingers. Just you and me this week, Matthew.
It is.
It is. All right, what we got this week?
Oh, and live from New York, it's Saturday night. The latest film from writer-director Jason Reitman. You may know him from little films like Thank You for Smoking, Juno, Up in the Air, Young Adult, The Front Runner, and Ghostbusters Afterlife. And that's probably one of my favorite from him. But Oscar, I believe he's Oscar. Did he win?
Yeah, I think he was nominated. I think 4 times.
But he never won. Really? Justin. I already forgot his name.
Jason.
Jason. Wow, I just said it too. Jason, you won an Oscar?
Oh yeah.
To a great start.
Best for 2010, Best Picture.
Oh, never won. Always nominated.
4-time nominated. Yeah. Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay, and in 2008 for Best Director.
Yeah, for Juno and Up in the Air. Up in the Air is a great movie if you haven't seen it. That's a fantastic movie. You know, I don't remember Juno. I should probably go back and rewatch that movie.
Juno's a great movie. Hilarious.
I also, Up in the Air is great. And one of my favorites from him is Ghostbusters Afterlife. For me, he definitely changed what a Ghostbusters movie is. And a lot of people, if you like the original Ghostbusters, and some people don't like Afterlife because it goes, you know, it's a little bit more like, not emotional, but like what's the word? Sentimental, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's probably why I like it more than some of the other ones. But regardless, anyway, that is our writer-director, and also written by Gil Keenan, who is the director of Monster House and City of Ember, also the co-writer of Ghostbusters Afterlife, and the writer-director of A Boy Called Christmas and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. So I find it kind of interesting that even Jason Reitman was also a co-writer for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. So technically, as a duo, they were both collaborating at the same time on the writing process for both Ghostbusters Afterlife and Saturday Night. So this was happening at the same time, which I find interesting that we were getting basically 2 complete different movies because we reviewed Frozen Empire earlier this year.
Yeah, and I've read a couple of interviews where they like to work together. Like they've been working on many projects together, so that, you know, it seems like they work better as a pair whenever they're working on whatever they're working on.
Yeah, and I mean I think they're one of their first main projects was probably Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I think from there they've been working well together. So anyway, I think it's an interesting mix between like them working on Saturday Night and then them working on like they were both in the writing room, but then they were also directing each other's movies that they were writing roughly around the same time. And it's probably why maybe Jason Reitman didn't want to come back or couldn't come back for Frozen Empire, because he was directing Saturday Night. So, but yeah, I think that's interesting. What an interesting year they have for the both of them. And it stars Gabriel LaBelle, who I didn't realize until after I saw the movie he was in The Fabelmans. He played a young Steven Spielberg, and I was like, oh wow, that's like what a progression that he has. And I was also listening to an interview, and Jason Reitman actually met Gabriel LaBelle at the premiere of The Fabelmans, and was very surprised how he was holding his own against like Steven Spielberg and all the other players there. And then he said later that week he had a cup of coffee with him and really liked his persona and his vibe, and then, you know, put him in his next movie. And I mean, he's only 21 years old, which he seems very young. In Saturday Night, he was playing, obviously, Lorne Michaels, and Lorne Michaels was about to turn 30 at the time. So there's like a 10-year difference from the actor's real age and who he's portraying. But I'm going to be honest with you, I couldn't even tell the difference.
Absolutely, yeah. I was going to say I would if you hadn't told me that, I would never have known.
Yeah. Also starring Rachel Sennett, Cora Michael Smith, Ella Hunt, Dylan O'Brien, Matt Wood, Lamorne Morris, Nicholas Braun, Willem Dafoe, and J.K. Simmons. This is, I wouldn't say like an all-star cast because some of these are not like well known, but it's a stacked cast nonetheless. There's so many people in this movie.
Well, see, and we'll talk about it when we review it. But I think for me, that's what I really enjoyed of that. It was a bunch of, like, yeah, there's some well-known names cherry picked in there, but for the most part, these are like not like fresh actors, but these are young actors.
They're all young actors, yeah, and also just in the spirit of SNL, because it's highlighting the first ever episode and 90 minutes leading up to the first episode of SNL, those people like Chevy Chase and John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, they were also, for the most part, unknowns at the time. So I think it's kind of keeping with the spirit that you cast, and in a similar sense, unknown actors, for the most part, to kind of portray these roles and kind of keeping that spirit alive. So definitely a lot to talk about Saturday Night. And also a little fun fact before we get into it, October 11th, 1975 was the premiere of Saturday Night Live nearly 50 years ago, and this is when the movie came out, October 11th. So they definitely knew what they were doing here.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff to talk about this movie, so I can't wait to dive into it. But before we do all that, we're going to be skipping what you're watching this week, but we have a lot. I'm not sure if you've been listening to us, you would notice in the last week we did not cover any Agatha, any Penguin, so we got some catching up to do on that. So we're going to be giving you we finished out Agatha All Along. So we're going to go over episodes 1 through 9. I'm sorry, not 1 through 9.
The whole series.
The whole series. We're wrapping up our conversation with Agatha All Along with episodes 6 through 9, as well as just a retrospective of the entire season. And then we're going to be talking about the Penguin 5 and 6. And then in 2 episodes' time, we're going to be talking about 7 and 8, which are the final 2 episodes. So, I mean, these shows, Ernesto, have been such a fun time to watch week to week. And so I am really excited to hear your thoughts on at least the finale of Agatha All Along later in the episode. But before that, we got a bunch of news. My God. I've been yammering around this entire time. We got so much news to talk about. So I'm going to just talk about that now. Christopher Nolan, let's start there, is returning to Universal Pictures to write and direct his next film, slated to hit theaters July 17th, 2026. This part's really funny to me. As a gesture of goodwill, Warner Brothers tried to lure Nolan back to the studio by writing him a 7-figure check, returning the quote-unquote tenant fees he waived. But alas, the gesture failed to bring Nolan back. I think this is hilarious that Warner Brothers knew they screwed up by losing Christopher Nolan, because he made the Batman movies, he made Inception, he made Interstellar, all through Warner Brothers. And then Christopher Nolan felt like he got screwed over, which he kind of did when he released Tenet during the pandemic, and he thought the whole situation was viewed poorly, as well as when Warner Brothers was doing their entire film slate to go into theaters and on HBO Max at the time in 2021. Christopher Nolan did not like that at all, so he decided to take his next movie over to Universal, which was Oppenheimer, and it won all the Oscars. And then Warner Brothers was like, oh no, that could have been us. And so, and now they're trying to get Nolan back. But, I mean, honestly, if I was Nolan, I would stick with Universal, too. Why would I move?
It's like, looks like they're treating me pretty well over here.
Yeah, and also, Universal gave me an Oscar, so you didn't.
Just saying.
Just saying. So I think, in my opinion, and I have no skin in the game, I think Nolan made a good choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matt Damon and Tom Holland have confirmed to star in the Untitled film. Plot details are being kept under wraps, but rumors suggest that it might be a period piece, which is also a horror film. Filming is expected to begin in early 2025.
Yeah, I think all that sounds great. Fantastic actors. I trust Christopher Nolan, so I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I remember a lot of the headlines were going around of Tom Holland the last week because there was Spider-Man news, and then he got the call for the next Nolan film, and so Tom Holland's going to have a busy 2025, and then we're going to see him all over our screens in 2026, as the next Spider-Man in the next Spider-Man movie, as well as in the next Nolan picture. I feel like in this case is like he's got to win an Oscar at this point, right? Like Marvel, Spider-Man, Nolan. And then also Matt Damon, I believe this is the first time he's actually going to be starring as the lead, because he was in Interstellar for briefly, and then he was also in as a supporting role in Oppenheimer. So now maybe Matt Damon is trying to get another Oscar. He's like, well, if it worked well for Cillian Murphy, maybe I can get on that some Oscar time as well. But
yeah, it's his time. I mean, Matt Damon is an absolutely fantastic actor.
He's won an Oscar. He's got it, right?
For Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, I was just double checking on that. I agree with you. Maybe for Good Will Hunting, but he's got to win an Oscar. Yeah. Oh, he did win an Oscar, but not for acting. He won for writing. Yeah, Good Will Hunting.
Best Picture.
And then he was nominated for Best Supporting Role in Invictus, Best Leading Role in The Martian, and he was a producer on Manchester by the Sea, so he was nominated for that as well. And then also nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role for Good Will Hunting. But he won it for the screenplay. So he has an Oscar under his belt. So maybe he wants to get some more gold under that. But yeah, I mean, next Christopher Nolan movie, who's not going to be excited for it? 2026 can't come fast enough. And honestly, if it's also a horror movie too, that's something we haven't seen from Christopher Nolan. So if he's still dishing out some new content, I'm all for it.
I trust anything that he does.
And we're definitely going to be talking about it once it comes about.
All right, moving on. Our boy, Mike Flanagan. A TV series adaptation of Stephen King's novel Carrie is in development at Amazon MGM Studios. From Mike Flanagan, the series logline describes it as a bold and timely reimagining of the story of misfit high schooler Carrie White, who has spent her life in seclusion with her domineering mother. After her father's sudden and untimely death, Carrie finds herself contending with the alien landscape of public high school, a bullying scandal that shatters her community, and the emergence of mysterious telekinetic powers. Flanagan will serve as showrunner, writer, and executive producer for the series under his overall deal with Amazon MGM Studios. Carrie was Stephen King's first novel that was originally published in 1974 and was later adapted into a film in 1976, followed by a TV remake in 2002 and another remake in 2013. I've seen them all except for the TV remake, but the 1974 film is considered a classic. And the one in 2013 maybe not on the same level as the original, but I thought it was fine. Because it wasn't even like a remake, it was actually like a continuation, almost like the next generation of Carrie. If I remember correctly. Like a new age Carrie.
Yeah, the story, it's like, I know the broad strokes. I know I've seen them both. I just don't remember it fully. And instead of like, we just finished passing the horror Halloween season, so I'm not something I'm going to go back and rewatch. But I mean, if Mike Flanagan's going to take a hand on it, then I would love to see his interpretation of a Carrie series.
What was that show we watched last year?
The Fall of the House of the Usher.
Oh, I mean, if he can even give us even like close to, it doesn't even have to surpass it. If it's even close to what that show was, then this is going to be incredible.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like watching the House of the Fall of the Usher, like going through the works of Edgar Allan Poe was like a masterclass at all of his short stories and how he was able to weave like multiple stories into one overarching one. I mean, I am very excited. And I'm not often one to be like, oh, we already got the story of Carrie. Like, we don't need to see it again. But I'm not opposed to seeing his version as well as a series version. Actually, I think find it quite interesting that we have not got a TV series on Carrie, but rather just 3 movies on it. So I'm not sure how much story they're going to add to it, or maybe we're getting more story that was been always left out from the books. Who knows? But This isn't the first time he's adapted Stephen King, and I doubt this will be the last time. All right, moving on to our next story. A Prince Charming movie is in the works from Disney, with Wonka and Paddington filmmaker Paul King directing, and Chris Hemsworth in talks to star as Prince Charming himself. Simon Barnaby and John Croker, who are the writers of Paddington 2, will co-write the screenplay. Though Prince Charming was originally the love interest of Cinderella, this project will not specifically be linked to the 1950s animated classic. Plot details are still unknown, and it's unclear if the film will be live action or animated, which I find that part the most interesting.
That you don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he's a beautiful man. I mean, Chris Hemsworth. He basically is Prince Charming in real life.
I mean, the way that I see it, why hide that face?
Yeah,
why
exactly.
hide behind a microphone? Like, if you're gonna cast Chris Hemsworth as Prince Charming, you want to see his face. I just not only want to hear his voice. So
yeah, I guess this is fine. I guess.
Sure. It's one of those situations where I don't know why this needs to be a movie.
Yeah, I'm more leaning towards that, but you know what? If it makes Disney happy and it makes them the money that they want to make, like, this seems like something, like, if you're gonna go animated, you might as well just throw it on Disney Plus.
Right? Yeah, yeah. I animated doesn't make any sense to me. And if we're going live action, which makes a little bit more sense, then at the very least, I can maybe be down for it more, since it's not just a flat out remake of another animated classic. So if there's an original idea in the works there, then maybe I'll be okay with it. And also kind of Wonka in the same vibe as well. Like, it wasn't a remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but it was, in a sense, a prequel. So maybe Paul King has an interesting idea that they want to explore with this Prince Charming character. And who knows? They said it wasn't specifically linked to to Cinderella. So maybe this is an amalgamation of Prince Charming's and all of the animated classics. And maybe you'll have something to say about something. I don't know.
We'll see. Maybe.
I'm stretching.
Yeah.
but I'm sure there's going to be music, which Paul King did very well with Wonka. So
that's fair.
If we get original music, I'm fine with that too. So
okay.
We'll see.
All right, moving on. John Wick director Chad Stahelski has announced that a John Wick anime prequel movie is in the works and will explore John Wick's past as a professional killer. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he said, "We are knee-deep in development on a future anime. It will be a prequel to John Wick movie fans know and love, but it is unclear exactly when it will take place. Just as the upcoming John Wick TV series Under the High Table opens up new storytelling opportunities, we can be a bit more crazy and nutty in the anime, and we can be a lot more explicit in our storytelling and world building on the TV show. So those are exciting to us without seeming repetitive, and that's where we're putting our energies right now." I actually really like what he said, because instead of it being the same thing being distributed everywhere, it's each thing is different, but it exists because it's exploring different themes. So like the TV show exploring the world building, whereas this they don't have to get crazy with the stunt doubles, because it's gonna be an anime, and then that medium opens up to be violent and it'd be a little bit more digestible. So I'm actually all for this. I think this is gonna be great. And then if we get because then we can get a drawn young Keanu Reeves, but still have Keanu Reeves' voice.
I'm assuming he's going to voice it. They didn't say that he was going to, but it would be silly if he didn't.
Yeah. Unless he's like teenage John Wick.
I'm just quite surprised that like every couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, I feel like, oh, another John Wick project is in the work. I was like, my God, how much are we going to stretch this property? Because right now I feel like we're getting a little bit overloaded at the moment with so many John Wick properties. Like, we have the first 4 movies, right? We already got the Continental, which was a 3-part series on Peacock. We're getting the Ballerina that comes out next year.
Which I think that looks hopeful. Like, I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, okay. Like, I see what you're putting down.
Yeah, and we saw also we also knew that Keanu Reeves was going to be in it in some fashion. So
looks like a cameo, possibly.
Yeah. We also have the Donnie Yen movie that's coming out in the future. We also got this new Under the High Table series that's also in the works, and now we have this anime. So I mean, don't get me wrong, I love John Wick, and there's also rumors of a John Wick 5 potentially that they haven't confirmed, but also been rumored for quite some time shortly after Chapter 4 came out. So there's just so much things that they're trying to do with it, and I think obviously Lionsgate see this as a viable asset, and obviously so does Chad Stahelski if he keeps coming back to this property. So I'm interested, but I don't know how invested I actually want to be in every single thing they come out with.
Matt, John Wick is my Fast and Furious.
You don't understand.
You understand. I get it. It is over the top action, but there's just something about it that just keeps pulling me back.
And don't get me wrong, I'm probably going to watch all of it. I never watched The Continental. That
Neither
didn't interest me at all. And also I heard it wasn't great, so that didn't really push me to go watch it either. But so far, all the other ones, and it seems like all the same people are kind of involved with it somehow. So, I mean, by all means, if they're willing, Lionsgate seems to be giving them all the money to keep giving them John Wick stuff. So, yeah, I'll check it out. There's an interest there.
Same.
Moving on to some bullshit.
Yeah, this is some fuck shit right here from...
Well, Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2 is in high contention for the Academy Award nominations this year. Hans Zimmer's Dune Part 2 score will unfortunately not be in the running due to failing to meet eligibility requirements to the Academy's limit on pre-existing music. Therefore, it cannot be nominated for Best Original Score. The Academy rule states, quote, "In cases such as sequels and franchises from any media, the score must not be more than 20% of pre-existing themes and music borrowed from previous scores in the franchise. Since Zimmer's composition for Dune Part 2 incorporates substantial elements from his work on 2021's Dune, it falls outside of the eligibility criteria. However, Zimmer's work on Dune Part 2 remains in contention to be recognized by other award shows like the Critics' Choice Awards, Golden Globes, BAFTA, and even the Grammys. Additionally, Zimmer's score on Stephen McQueen's upcoming World War II drama Blitz remains eligible, providing the composer another shot at Academy recognition this year. This is very disappointing news to hear, mainly because this score was not way better, but it was significantly better than Dune Part 1. It's similar. Yeah. These themes hit way harder, and I feel like he was able to kind of perfect it in a way to follow along with Part 2. And it's just a shame because I love Dune Part 2 score more than I do the first one, and now it can't even be, not even in the conversation.
Yeah, and what's kind of bullshit about it is that it's using the same because we're still in the same world. So a lot of the elements and themes still play into this one. But it's what he took from the original score and how he was able to amplify it with the Dune Part 2. I think it's there. I think it's wrong and a disservice. There should be an exception made because of how exceptional his work is and how exceptional this score in particular is and how it elevates this film.
Yeah, because also, and I saw people in the comments, and they're absolutely right. It's so when Star Wars was nominated a bunch of times, that they're not playing with themes that we've heard from 8 other films. Come on, man.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it's can we just respect John Williams that much that we have to give him a nomination every time he makes a movie? No. That, I don't know.
And okay, so let's take your argument. Even if that is the case, Hans Zimmer deserves the exact same respect. I mean, His work, so much of his work is so iconic. I'm literally wearing a Dune shirt right now.
Yeah, it seems quite ridiculous that this is kind of even a rule. It's a completely different movie, but it has to be 20%. And I doubt Hans Zimmer is I got to keep the themes under 20% so I can be in an award contention. No, he's not thinking about that. He's thinking about what's best for the movie. So I don't. This is like the first time I've even heard this was even an issue, and I have a hard time believing that every other score that's based off of a sequel or franchise has only been using less than 20% of the previous scores, like themes. So I don't know how new this rule is, but I'm calling bullshit on the Academy for this one because this could have easily won for Best Original Score, hands down.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But they said he still has another chance. But I'm at no offense to Blitz, but like Doom Part 2, that score is just that slaps.
So good.
One of the best of the year, easily.
Yeah, easily. All right. What this is like really interesting news because I felt like we were, and I don't remember how many episodes ago, but we were literally just talking about, so we're talking about the Wayans brothers, the scary movie reboot that was announced at CinemaCon earlier this year from Paramount Pictures and Miramax has an exciting update. The Wayans brothers are reuniting for the first time in 18 years to write an original screenplay for the film. The scary movie film franchise was developed by Marlon Wayans, Shawn Wayans, and Keenan Ivory Wayans. Keenan Ivory Wayans wrote and directed the first two films in 2000 and 2001, while Marlon and Shawn wrote and starred in the first two films. The last film the Wayans brothers all worked together on was 2009's parody film Dance Slick. This was literally when we were talking about this news from CinemaCon, the one thing I said, you know, the only way that would make this good is this. And, you know, they must have heard me. But I think this is interesting because for the point that we talked about when we originally brought this news up is that you couldn't make 2000 Scary Movie today. But right. I think that we are such in dire need of like comedy like that. Not necessarily that exact same thing, but comedy that seems like over the top, like just crazy comedy. Like I don't know. I'm trying to think of it exactly. Like we need that style of movie, but not necessarily the movie that you cannot make today. We need that version of that movie for today. If that makes sense.
Even comedies in general is like, and we've had this conversation before. There's not a lot of comedies that go to theaters anymore. That's like a straight comedy. It has to like the perfect example of that is like The Fall Guy, for example, that came out earlier this summer. Like it's an action comedy. It's like you have to blend it with something else in order for it to like grab people's attention. But like a straight comedy, like last year's No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence,
yes,
like that was a straight comedy that went to theaters and it did fairly well for itself. But that is rare because most comedies just go to streaming nowadays because they feel like that it won't drag, have the attention of bringing people in. It's not like people are not going to droves like, say, like The Hangover was, where that was a straight comedy and it made, between the three movies, probably close to $1 billion. And I don't know if there's any movie out there that can generate that level of, high demand to constitute people driving to the theaters for it. Or just waiting to go watch it at home. Yeah. But so there's already that stigma on a comedy already, and I think the pandemic not really forced people, but like maybe got people comfortable just watching the latest comedy movie at home. That being said, I'm really interested to see why the Wayans brothers decided to come back for this, unless they were approached or they had an idea. I don't know what came first on like the new Scary Movie. I'm sure the producers were like, hey, let's see if the Wayans brothers were interested in coming back to write something, or they're willing to give them a big fat check. I don't know where they can pull from. There's a lot of new stuff that, and especially in this new age of horror coming from A24, like there's so much you can do with that, and I'm curious to see how a parody of that would look like.
Because what those movies were, what a lot of it was like parodying movies, but they also found things in society to kind of blend that commentary. So it was like a commentary on the world today and comedy. So I'm wondering, with everything that's been happening, and I'm very intrigued on what they're going to be able to produce with this project. So I'm very intrigued in what's going to come out of this.
Yeah, because I'm not saying that they've written and produced gold. Like obviously the last film that they all worked together, Dance Flick, was a parody on. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it either, but it looks very like of its time, probably very similar to Scary Movie 1 and 2, and especially the like Meet the Spartans, epic movie, disaster movie, superhero movie. They all have the same vibe and feel to it that was brought by the the originality of Scary Movie.
Yes.
So so now you're even think about it even broader sense. You have what they necessarily started the reinvigorating the parody genre, and then having a string of movies that they were either involved or not involved with to continue the parody line. And then now you have all of that history on the parody genre. Now, how do you apply that to a new generation? Because we've seen a version of that, say, like with Weird Al's movie, the Weird Al Yankovic story. Like, that was a parody on himself as well as the biopic genre itself. And so that was a very clever way to kind of be funny as well as be a parody on itself. So it can be done well. It's just whether or not they want to go down that route or they're just looking to have a good time and go back to how they used to do it. So who knows? But to your point, it's very intriguing nonetheless.
Yeah. All right. Moving on, Netflix and A24 are officially moving forward with the second season of the Emmy-winning series Beef, and is confirmed to remain as an anthology series, bringing on an all-star cast. Season 2 is set to star Oscar Isaac, Carrie Mulligan, Kaylee Spaney, and Charles Melton. The official logline for the new season states, a young couple witnesses an alarming fight between their boss and his wife, triggering chess moves of favors and coercion in the elitist world of a country club and its Korean billionaire owner. The season will consist of 8 30-minute episodes. Lee Sung-jin returns as creator, showrunner, and executive producer. Stephen Young, Ali Wong, and Jake Schreier will also executive produce. So I think exactly what we talked about, I think that is the main way that this show can survive. So it's like thinking of like White Lotus. So every season we get a new scenario and you just put in a brand new cast. I think this format works for this show because I don't necessarily want to see the continuation of that Ali Wong, Stephen Young episode. I do think it's interesting that they are staying on as executive producers, so they're going to have some sort of say in the direction of this show. I'm here for it. I think this sounds great.
Yeah, I think the fact that they're still on board with this series just shows the attachment they had to the original, like the first season.
Correct.
So it's kind of cool that they want to like, hey, we want to continue what we've been doing. This not necessarily our story is done, but also, I mean, look at this cast. Like, my God,
stacked.
Stacked for then all of them to kind of agree on a series too. It's like I don't know how much time that takes. I'm sure obviously it's a lot more. 8 30-minute episodes, about 4 hours worth of content there, and. Like, I'm sure that's like, a little bit longer than a movie sense, but like
one long movie. It's an Irishman and some change.
That's right. I forgot we used that as a reference.
For reference, The Irishman is, I think it's 3.5. The runtime, I believe, is 3.5 hours.
Yes, but if anything is long, we call it an Irishman.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, Oscar Isaac, Carey Mulligan, I was like, those are all stars in and of itself. We have up and coming Kaylee Spaney, who has an incredible 2024 so far, coming off of Civil War and Alien Romulus.
Yes.
And then Charles Melton was even looked at in last year. He didn't get nominated, but he was definitely looked at in...
that movie we watched.
Yes. May, December.
Yes. He was in high Oscar contention. I think he just missed the radar. Similarly to Natalie Portman and... Julianne Moore?
Julianne Moore, yeah. So like that whole movie, I think it was only nominated for a screenplay, but yeah, I know they were also looked at for writing for acting performances. So all of these actors have the caliber of delivering all-star performances here. So I'm very much looking forward to the second season, more than I did if they decided to continue the story from the first one.
Same.
Moving on to 20th Century Studios president Steven Asbell revealed in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter a few updates on some of its biggest franchises. This is actually a very lengthy article. And also, before I even continue, there are so many like misleading headlines that came out from this article. And they're talking about like, this for the Predator, this for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, this for Alien. And then upon reading it, it's like these headlines are assuming, and they're kind of reaching on what he actually said in the interview. So like, aside from like one thing, he didn't confirm anything in this interview, but he did provide updates on what kind of the studio is thinking right now, and kind of where they were and where they are and where they want to be. And I feel like all of that is interesting more than the headlines that came out of everywhere else. And the first thing I thought was interesting was when he was asked where is the balance between originals and franchises play, he said right now it's looking like next year half the slate. One job was figuring out these franchises movies first, and then coming up with the right cadence of Avatar, Apes, Aliens, and Predator specifically. Getting those right was the first part, which they believe they've done. And so that idea was able to say, okay, now we know when the Avatar movies are coming. We know about Predator. There will be another Apes in 2027, let's just say. So knowing where we can plan those franchises, it helps us to look to see and ask what kinds of original movies in terms of the genre do we want to test the markets with. Mm-hmm. And I found that whole sentence, even though I kind of butchered half of it, was very interesting in the sense of like, we're gonna plop and focus on where our franchises fit, and then that gives us an opportunity to explore original content. And I think that's fair. I mean, Avatar gives you $1 billion alone, so
can't deny that.
And also, not for nothing, I'm not sure how long Steven Asbell has been the president of 20th Century Studios, but with the acquisition of Disney on top of that, each one of these franchises have grown substantially in quality ever since they put these out. I mean, the first Predator movie to come out under Disney's ownership was Prey, and the same for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and the same for Alien Romulus. And all three of those movies were fantastic.
Absolutely.
I think, and then also we have Avatar: The Way of Water, which made $2 billion. So I would say that they're doing quite well with the franchises and are able to now kind of have a security blanket over with their franchises and probably with the studio, and then probably can take more risks into expanding on original content that doesn't have that much pressure to be big. And if it turns out to be big, that's just a win for the studio. And then coming off of the success of Alien Romulus, he said that we're working on a sequel idea now. We haven't quite closed a deal with director Fede Alvarez, but we're going to. And he has an idea that we're working on. The two survivors, Rain and Andy, played by Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson, were real highlights of the film. I fell in love with both of them, and I want to see where their story is. So a lot of people there's a lot of headlines out there saying that an Alien Romulus 2 is in development, bringing back Fede Alvarez and Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson. And I was like, he didn't say any of that.
Say he wants that, but
yeah, he wants that. But they said they didn't close a deal on him just yet. But they have ideas for a sequel. So that's the idea. That's the dream and the hope. But that's not locked down. It's not confirmed. But we actually had this conversation when we reviewed Alien Romulus that we had rather have seen another Alien movie or a continuation off of Romulus, and now we can see kind of where their head's at. So what do you think about that?
I think it's fine. I'm fine with them coming back. It's just the story needs to be intriguing. Like, don't force them into a situation. Obviously, they're going to get into some kind of alien situation somehow, but as long as it's not forced, then I'm fine with it.
Okay. And honestly, I feel like I think more importantly, if they can bring back Fede Alvarez for a sequel, then I'm locked in.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
At that moment, I think he can, create something even crazier than Romulus.
Give him a little bit more free range with his vision and what he wants to do. Then I think it'll do well.
Yeah, and also not to slide under the radar, but he kind of haphazardly said, like very subtly, is like there will be another Apes movie in 2027. Let's just say. So obviously they're looking to work on other I'm assuming a sequel to Planet of the Apes. I don't know if that's even confirmed, but obviously their eye is on another Apes movie, and they're looking for it to come out in 2027, which is 3 years from now. So I'm sure the visual effects is going to take some time on that.
Yeah, which I'm totally fine with. I've really enjoyed The Last Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
So did I. It just sucks that we have to potentially wait 3 years for it, but hey, you can't change that. Then when asked about Predator, he said, yes, a Predator movie will have a theatrical release. I'll tell you very simply, after Prey became a success, director Dan Trachtenberg came back and said he didn't want to do Prey 2. And we're like, what do you want to do? And he rattled off a bunch of ideas that were really crazy but really cool. We actually done 2 of them. 2 are coming out next year. One we can't talk about yet, but the other is the live-action Predator film with Elle Fanning that just wrapped in New Zealand. That will be out theatrically sometime next year. After this article was released, Disney announced that particular Predator movie will be called Predator Badlands and will hit theaters November 7th, 2025. Asbel continued to say that there's a secret Predator movie that will be out there before the theatrical one that I can't say anything about yet, but that Dan Trachtenberg directed both films. So I think that's the only thing so far in this article that he actually confirmed.
But it's so vague, and people are so interested in these properties that I think it's enough that we're talking about it. It's enough to create that buzz about these projects. Like everything he said, I'm totally excited for it.
Yeah, which also is crazy to think about. It's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean there's another? What do you mean you filmed a secret Predator movie that you can't talk about? That's going to be coming out before the one you're talking about. Yeah. So that already presents a level of intrigue, and if you're counting it as the other one, then I'm assuming it's going to be a Hulu streaming movie, and then you're going to have the theatrical one come out. So that definitely piques my attention for sure, and the fact that Dan Trachtenberg had time to film 2 movies, very curious if they're going to have any connection to any of these films whatsoever. Other highlights that came from the article. Avatar Fire and Ash is still on track to hit theaters December 2025. Multiple Agatha Christie projects are in development, and there are currently no plans for another Die Hard movie, Kingsman movie, or Free Guy sequel. So if you're looking forward for any of those franchises, it ain't happening. But yeah, a lot was said in this article, but a lot of interesting stuff. And I feel like the news buzzy headlines kind of like after reading it, it's like, okay, no, this isn't happening per se. Like things were talked about, but nothing was concrete. But I like that we got, at least we know what's in the mind that's coming out for the studios for the next couple of years.
True.
And the last story we're going to talk about is from Marvel Studios. They have revealed the schedule for its 2025 movie and Disney Plus television lineup. And if you are watching us on YouTube, you're seeing the sizzle reel that they put. Or Spotify. I forgot about Spotify. You're right. I apologize. You see the sizzle reel that they posted online of like some of the stuff that's coming out on Disney Plus. But as you watch that, rounding out 2024, however, Deadpool Wolverine will be streaming on Disney Plus November 12th, and What If's third and final season will be available to stream on December 22nd, which was around this time last year they put out season 2. So it seems like they were very happy with this very end of the year timeline for the show. And I liked What If season 2. So I'm excited to see how they decide to cap this off. And they said that it makes sense they're ending it because it's probably going to be like we're winding down, so to speak, on the multiverse story saga. So so it makes sense that they're going to be stopping What If series. But kicking off 2025, starting with Marvel Television, they announced that Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man will stream on January 27th, so very soon. Daredevil Born Again, oh man, coming March 4th, followed by Ironheart on June 24th. Eyes of Wakanda, which is an animated series, is on August 6th. Marvel Zombies, which is another animated series, is going to be out in October 2025, and then it's going to close out the year with the Wonder Man series that is live action starring Yahya Mateen Abdul II. And they'll also star Trevor Slattery, Ben Kingsley returning for the role, and that will be on December 2025 at some point. So a lot of exciting things coming from Marvel. And then to Marvel Studios, this was already announced, but Captain America Brave New World hits theaters February 14th, followed by Thunderbolts on May 2nd, and the Fantastic Four: The First Steps is July 25th, 2025. Noticeably absent, however, from the lineup, to no surprise, is Marvel Studios' Blade, starring Mahershala Ali, has been removed from the upcoming release schedule calendar and has been delayed indefinitely. This news seems inevitable given that the Marvel Studios is still looking for a new director. Disney will now premiere 20th Century Studios' Predator Badlands from Prey director Dan Trachtenberg, we just talked about, in its place, and that will hit theaters November 7th, 2025. Also, a little bit of other news that came out looking ahead into 2026. It was also announced that Spider-Man 4, starring Tom Holland, will hit theaters July 26, 2026, just a few months after Avengers Doomsday, which hits theaters May 1st, 2026, but before Avengers Secret Wars, which hits theaters May 7th, 2027. So as long as you got those dates, I'm sure you had your calendar ready as I was spitting out all those dates there. But the one thing I have to say, Ernesto, is that we had a very small 2024 for Marvel Studios. They came out with a total of, now we're going to see 3 shows, that being Echo, four shows. That would be Echo, X-Men 97, Agatha All Along, and now we just found out What If Season 3. And then they came out with one movie, which was Deadpool Wolverine. And so far, everything the Marvel Studios put out this year has been bangers. And so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shows and 3 movies.
Yeah, they're making up for lost time.
Yes. And so is this a good thing, or are we overstuffing again?
It seems like a little bit on the overstuffing side, but if it's all good and different, and they've gotta make up for lost time, because I feel like they're, before this past year, as they made fun of in Deadpool and Wolverine, that Marvel has been kind of like on the downswing. It kind of been on the slower side, so maybe let's see. Hopefully, this is all their new course correct. So let's see what happens.
And I think, to your point, that would be the test right there. Is 2024 was your reset period, and now you are putting out all of these shows and movies. Let's see if that time was put to good use, and we're getting quality back into the MCU.
Correct.
Because if one thing starts slipping, then apparently the fans are going to riot again.
Yeah.
So you don't want that. But there you go. That is all the entertainment news we have for you guys this week. As always, you can go to Facebook and Threads. Yeah, thank you. I totally forgot. If you want all the latest breaking news, you can go to our Facebook page at Box Office Bingers, as well as our Instagram and Threads page at @boxoffice_bingers. We'll post all the latest news over there first, and then we'll come back in the show and we'll talk about it. So with that, like I said earlier, we're going to be skipping what you're watching this week, but we have plenty to talk about Agatha All Along. But Ernesto, before that, I have to use the bathroom, so just hit pause and we'll come back right now.
Okay.
And we're back. The tank is empty, and we're going to be talking about The Witch's Road, specifically the end of it, because we are going to be discussing episodes 6 through 9 and kind of wrapping up our Agatha All Along conversation. Given the past few weeks, I know we had a couple of scheduling issues with all the different stuff, so now we're kind of compiling all the rest of these episodes into right now. And before we even get started, just as an overview of the entire season, I had a great time watching this show.
Yeah, I think it was fun. I think there's some things to talk about in the finale, but I think overall it was the series was way better than I thought it was going to be. I actually expected nothing, and I kind of expected to almost like Secret Invasion, where it would be more of a passive watch, and but no, I found myself really enjoying the ride.
Surprisingly, the same. I think, again, I've said this before, that when I heard about this Agatha series, I'm like, why do we need this? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, hold the phone there, Matt. Because they gave us one hell of a show that before it even came out, I wrote off. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of story in here, a lot of attention to detail, a lot of character-driven story beats. And I was like, wow, they took the time to develop this show. This was not just put together for a cash grab. There was a story to tell here. Yeah. And I 100% appreciate this. And Megan was even into it this time around because she liked WandaVision. And then we quickly got into Agatha All Along. And then we were having conversations about the finale too. We watched the finale as it dropped because we didn't want any spoilers to hit toward the end. Yeah, and so we're going to be talking about, like I said, the last 4 episodes. And we're going to start with episode 6 called Familiar by Thy Side. In the last episode, we learned that Teen is Billy Maximoff, and is now in episode 6, we get to see his backstory, which we had predicted when we last talked about the show. When we opened the episode with William Kaplan at his bar mitzvah. During the party, we get a reading from Lilia, which we found out that she was the one that casted the sigil. Which I thought it was Agatha, to be honest with you, but I was not expecting Lilia to be the one to actually do it, and do it before the car accident. Like, this had nothing to do with Billy Maximoff, everything to do with the character William Kaplan, which we'll get to in a second. The party was then interrupted by activity that was happening at Westview during the events of WandaVision, and it leads the family leaving and end up getting into a car crash. Within that car crash, William Kaplan died in the car crash, and allowed Billy's Maximoff spirit to transfer into William Kaplan's body. So around the time that the car crash happened, I guess his life force was leaving his body. I guess we were toward the end of when Wanda was saying goodbye to the children at WandaVision, and then I guess their spirit somehow moved into his body. So that was the only part that I was kind of a little bit confused about. Do you think later down the episodes they kind of explained that a little bit? But I don't think that they did. It's just kind of a thing that happened.
Well, and it's not the same, but in the comic books, he's a soul fragment that's created by Mephisto to torment Wanda. So it's not the same, but I feel like it's in the same vein. It's kind of like the essence of what they did is kind of similar.
Yeah, and then maybe not definitely Mephisto was uninvolved, but and it was.
Well, they mentioned him. This is my one complaint is that we spent overall through the last episodes we got more hints of this Mephisto character, but yet we have not seen him yet. When the fuck are we going to see him? He is like a crucial villain to the MCU, but we have yet to encounter him. So I'm wondering when and where they're building him up, because I really thought we were going to get some semblance of him at some point in this series.
Yeah, honestly, like toward the end, I thought we were going to get a cameo from either Wanda or Vision or Mephisto. None of that actually happened. Instead, we got to see a little bit of backstory on Nicholas Scratch, which we'll get to a little bit later. But yeah, so now Billy Maximoff is in William Kaplan's body. Billy is now confused. He's able to read minds, but unable to remember any prior events for both Billy and William. So he's kind of like in this vessel just trying to figure it out. We see that 3 years have passed, and he continues to find out who he is. And through relentless research, he was able to have a meeting with none other than a traumatized and frantic Ralph Boner in a hilarious cameo from Evan Peters. I think this is a great touch. For people who love WandaVision. And he was able to tell William about his experience at Westview during the events of WandaVision, and sparks a realization that to William that he is Billy Maximoff. So I think he was able to realize that, like, oh my God, I'm the son of the Scarlet Witch for the most part. And then he went on more deep dive into researching it. And then we see the events from the first few episodes play out through Billy's perspective, and how his purpose on the Witch's Road is now to find his twin brother Tommy. So that's like an overview of episode 6. But yeah, overall, I think this was a strong episode that we got. It definitely, I enjoyed very much seeing a different perspective, and I think toward these last few episodes we got that a lot, actually, of like seeing what we thought was one thing and then realized it was something else. Yes. And I think it was also hilarious to see Billy's perspective when he was trying to get Agatha out of the trance. I think that had a lot of funny moments in there, and I felt like at one point when they were sitting in the chair that they were going to break character. Like, and I'm sure they might have done the stuff that was obviously not the final cut, but I forgot exactly what they were saying, but they were just like, looked like they were having a good time there, and it made me laugh a lot. Yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, it gave us his purpose and of the road of what he wanted to do, of him wanting to find his brother. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I thought it was good. We get the backstory overall. I thought it was great. I thought it was good. Yeah, a really solid episode to come off of like that big, oh no, shit, this is Billy Maximoff, and then makes sense to be like, all right, let's see what he's been doing this whole time. And it's actually not what I thought it was, and it was actually quite emotional in some ways, of like he's just trying to figure out who he is. And I love all the stuff too about like he feels like that he's kind of stealing in life, so to speak. Like this is not. He should be dead. He should not be in this vessel. And they explore a lot of that even throughout the end of the show as well. So I like that he's trying to figure out this duality of himself, of like who he really is. And even at one point in the next episode, actually, he asked, "Is he William or is he Billy?" And Lily was like, "That's a great question." That was never fully answered, but I think he needs to. At this point, I think the idea is like you got to find a mixture of both.
Yeah, you got to see what works for you. What do you feel in your heart? Who you really are.
Right, and it could be neither. It could be a new version of both people. So then we go into episode 7 called "Death Hand in Mine." Now we're back on the Witch's Road. Agatha and Billy enter the next trial involving tarot cards and swords falling from the ceiling, and our witches are now dressed in infamous pop culture witches. Agatha as Elphaba and Billy as Maleficent. We will later see Jennifer as I believe it's the evil old hag and the evil queen from Snow White. And then we saw Lilia as what's the other?
Glinda the Good Witch?
Thank you. Yes, also from The Wizard of Oz. Then we cut to Lilia and Jennifer underground trying to find their way back up. And the rest of the episode will follow Lilia on her journey through time and fill in the blanks, so to speak, on the meanings of some of the strange outbursts she's had throughout the season. And I thought this was showcased beautifully.
Yes.
This was her episode, and we got a lot of clarity on a lot of the random stuff that we were seeing. And a lot of people were theorizing this beforehand of like they were trying to piece together, but I don't think that people were expecting to have yet another emotional, character-driven episode that, puts things in perspective about life and death, and almost in a way like having life flash before your eyes in fragments as she's ultimately going to her end here. And I also found it interesting that within all that, she said the last time she was getting these types of vision is at a younger age. And we saw that when she was in like her younger self in those time jumps. And so now it feels like it's going to be a full loop because she kept going back to those moments, that things didn't make any sense. And now we see like this kind of this mental time travel that she's kind of been doing. Like I said, we found out that Lydia has been going through this mind time displacement where she is mentally jumping through time uncontrollably. Later in that episode, we also find out that Rio Duvall, played by Aubrey Plaza, is actually Lady Death, which is something that was been rumored and we talked about the last time we talked about the show, and has been collecting her bodies, quote unquote, throughout the season. Leela realized that death is coming for her and becomes clear that she must sacrifice herself to save her coven, and was able to take down the Salem 7 with her. Which I feel like that's the only thing I didn't like about the episode, was like the Salem 7 was this build-up and then they dead just like that. Like I feel like that they served not much.
They were able to take care of them, but at a major cost.
You're saying that they were able to kill the Salem, but also haven't Lily had to sacrifice herself?
Yeah, I mean they did just kind of like end, but it's not for nothing. Like Lilia had to sacrifice herself in order for them to prevail.
Yeah, but I feel like them as like characters didn't serve anything except for like this ongoing threat that kept chasing them.
Okay,
but
that's fair.
Ultimately, by the time like now they finally catch him, and then they died. Like they didn't have any speaking roles. Like I didn't even know what they were doing. In some cases, I guess they were controlled by Lady Death as well. Like their whole purpose behind it was just like this force that was just coming after them, but didn't really mean anything by the end of the day. Like I think at the end of the day, you could have not had that, and the show will remain the same for the most part, with a couple little details here.
That's fair. That's fair. I actually really enjoyed this episode. Like you were talking about playing with that time distortion, and just like she's experiencing like all moments of her life at different moments, the whole back and forth. And then it was interesting. I told you when I was rewatching earlier episodes with my wife that they planted those seeds way from the beginning. Yeah. Like, and how, like, there's one, I think, in one of the early episodes where she turns around and she just starts screaming. And I was like, oh, and like, they show that same scene later on. It's like, oh, that's like, they're literally showing you her dying, like, right from the very beginning. So I just thought it was really, really expertly done. I think we talked about that. We actually already knew that Rio was going to be deaf because it was spoiled through the cell of Funko Pops. And it's just really unfortunate because it just seems like this happens frequently in like so many different situations, like so many different things, elements from these shows that we don't want to get spoiled because it ruins storyline are ruined by merchandise. Yeah, that's happened way too often. And I think even the point of like with superhero shows in particular, like they want to push out the merchandise while the movie or show is coming out, but they don't have the patience to just hold back on certain ones until the episode's released. Or even movies too. I think the one that comes to mind off the top of my head was the Spider-Man No Way Home. Like that was spoiled through toys that we were gonna get the other Spider-Man within the film, whereas like you just revealed a major plot line throughout the movie. Like you gave us the reveal that the movie was trying to do. Like they had all this secret marketing and you fucked it up. And sadly for myself, like it took me a couple of days to get to that episode. Like I didn't watch it immediately. And already within 24 hours, I was able to put the pieces together very quickly through social media that Lilia was going to die and Rio Duvall was Lady Death. Like it was instantly. Like I saw a picture of her falling, and I was like, "Shit, she's probably going to die in this episode." And then I saw the image of Lady Death, and I was like, "Well, like I wouldn't say that I was surprised by any of this, but I would have rather watch it play out rather than me seeing an image of it and then me, coming to those own conclusions." That's fair. And that's why, like. When the finale came about, I was like, we're watching this as soon as it drops because I don't want to be, I don't want any spoilers to come out of this. But sometimes we don't always have the luxury to watch things as soon as they drop. True. So you kind of almost have to stay away from social media in a way, but sometimes, it's inevitable. And what's crazy was that, like, even with the finale, we had just finished watching it, and it was about 11 p.m., and I was already getting spoilers. And so I was like, well, I'm happy we watched it now, or else I would have just came across randomly. It got ruined for you. Yeah, but either way, like I thought this was, back-to-back great episodes of like really focusing on like Billy in episode 6, and then focusing on Lilia on episode 7. And so I think those are great, great character-driven moments that even we're seeing from like the Penguin. Like taking time to focus on the other characters, not just our title character. Yes. And I think this show is doing a great job of like making everyone that mattered into the show and like getting more information on Billy, seeing what's happening with Lilia and kind of the ultimate sacrifice for her. Like I thought these were 2 great back-to-back episodes leading into the finale. Yes. Which now we're going into episode 8, titled "Follow Me, My Friend: Glory to the End," and this felt like the climax of the movie. This was 100% the climax of the show. Yes. Like, I was actually quite surprised. Like, we still have another episode? Like, I feel like we're wrapping things up quite nicely right now. This feels like the end. Yeah. We are now at the end of the road. This acts as, like I said, the big MCU CGI action-heavy climax to the show. Since Lady Death cannot actually kill Billy, Agatha makes a deal with Death that if Agatha tricks Billy into giving himself to Death, then Death will leave Agatha alone. Agatha, Billy, and Jennifer all enter the final trial. We found out that Agatha was the one who unknowingly bounded Jennifer and was able to release the curse and free Jennifer, and which she was also able to get back her power. Agatha and Billy were able to work together for Billy to somehow connect with Tommy. So now Tommy's spirit is now maybe inhabits a new body, which I'm assuming that's what happened. Now alone, Agatha was able to complete the trial by planting a lock of her son's hair or her hair into the ground. It was her son's. Okay. It was because we revisit that later on in episode 9. But what was the reason? Like that was the part I was having a little bit confusing about. What was the significance of putting his hair into the soil and then having it grow? Was able for her to move on through this trial? Maybe because she had to let him go. She wasn't ready to face him. Maybe, but she was still having those issues in the finale. So then I don't know. Maybe to make a plant to get her out of there. I don't know. Maybe Nicholas. That was her key to get out of the road. She needed to face her. She needed to overcome this thing she had with her son, Nicholas Scratch. Okay, I can maybe buy that for $1. That's how she would grow. Is she needed to let him go, and I'm reaching right now. Yeah.
So that was the only part I was a little bit confused about with this episode of what that actually meant. But I like your theory. Where was I? There we go. Agatha now free. Lady Death is now here to collect Agatha since she didn't uphold her end of the deal. Lady Death and Agatha fight. Billy Maximoff comes flying in full costume as Wiccan. I don't know where he found the costume or had the time to find the costume, but I guess
he can make it. What the fuck? He's a powerful witch. He can just make shit. He can just alter reality and make his costume.
He's like, have you not seen WandaVision? She did the same thing.
It's like, hello, look at the things he creates. What we find out in episode 9. I think he's very easily enough for him to create his costume.
He uses his power to give Agatha her quote unquote purple back, and Billy even says like, "Don't kill me." And
don't take it all.
Don't take it all. And to Agatha's restraint, she did not. And so then Agatha and Billy fight Lady Death, knowing that this is not gonna end until Lady Death claims at least one person. Agatha ultimately sacrifices herself. There's a little bit of play on like, oh, Agatha betrayed Billy, but that didn't really happen. After the battle, Billy goes home. Upon entering his room, notices that everything in his room was somehow connected to the Witch's Road, and then feels a presence in the room, which we later find out was the ghost of Agatha that pops up in episode 9. So how do you feel like how this climax ended before we get to the final episode?
I thought to be honest, I think it worked. Well, see, I thought it was fine as an episode. I thought it worked really well as a climax to close out the story. But as I was talking to somebody at work, I feel like they should have flipped episode 8 and 9. Like you should have, because in episode 9, which we're going to talk about in a minute, we get the humanization of Agatha. But if we would have got the things would have held more. Episode 8 would have held more weight if we had gotten 9 before 8. If they had flipped them, I feel like it would have held more weight.
Yeah, and as we talk about episode 9. The one part that I'm just a little bit iffy on is now the ghost of Agatha. Like it felt like
we can get into that in a minute because like I felt like everything else leading up to this was great, but then like this place that we got to in the end, I'm a little like okay, I'm a little like I want to discuss this with you.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about episode 9, and then I guess we'll dive into it. So. Like I said, the episode ended with this presence in the room, and we didn't have to wait long because they announced they released the last 2 episodes back to back, which I found was very interesting because I think also two things. One, they wanted to end the series before Halloween because this dropped the day before Halloween, so they wanted to kind of get everything wrapped up while the Halloween season was still in play. But also, I think after the climax, that was clearly episode 8. I think. This now episode 9 serves as an epilogue to the climax rather than the final episode being the climax itself.
Yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Because like we definitely went like full down again. We're here now. This is the falling action in a way.
Well, let's go over episode 9 because I have thoughts.
Okay, all right. So episode 9, titled Maiden Mother Crone. We open the finale in the year 1790, where 50. We see 1750?
Or at least according to what I see online. 17. I don't remember exactly when. Just Wikipedia says 1750. That's what.
Okay, maybe I could have written it wrong. So I believe
this could also be wrong. So
late 1700s. How about that?
Yeah.
Where we see Agatha about to give birth to her son, but sees Lady Death looking to claim her son. She begs not to take him and to give her time. Lady Death then leaves, and Agatha gives birth to her son, which she later called Nicholas Scratch. Over the course of 6 years, Agatha and her son develop schemes to trick other witches so Agatha can drain their powers through Nicholas Scratch, though Nicholas Scratch was not a fan of this process. Along this journey together, they start to create this song about walking down the road, and eventually creates the lyrics to The Witch's Road, which I think that was an element I really was not expecting to come out of this show.
Yes.
Nicholas then sings the song in various towns to continue to lure witches and to continue on Agatha's scheme. In the middle of the night, about halfway through this episode, Lady Death claims Nicholas. To me, I found this very random. Like there wasn't a big inciting incident. It's just almost like your time is now up to hang out with your son, and they just kind of leave.
They never really told us why she wanted to take Nicholas, or was he just not, or was he not supposed to survive birth, or is that, and because she's a witch, she was able to bargain with death. But that's me speculating. Like, if that was the case, like that should have been like a 2-minute conversation between the two of them about why she's going to take him. But I feel like we never understood why she wanted to take Nicholas, unless we're not supposed to know why. But I feel like this is the time we're supposed to find out why.
Yeah, because it technically, aside from Agatha begging Death not to take her son, there was no interaction with them whatsoever.
Correct.
So there was little context of. It was almost in a sense that Agatha was always meant to have a miscarriage, or maybe death during the birth of her son. Like the son was never supposed to enter this world. That's the vibe I got. But then she was like, no, let me have some time with him. And then she's like, okay, but eventually I'm gonna have to take him. And then for whatever reason, she was like, all right, 6 years is good enough to spend time with your son, so I'm gonna take him now. There was no reason around that particular part of the storyline. So I found that just the whole process a little odd.
I agree.
Especially because it was like random one night. It's like, hey, it's time to go. Like, and there was even no signs that he was sick either. So just like all of a sudden, he has passed away. So in the midst of Agatha's grief, a witch approaches Agatha saying that she's heard the Ballad of the Witch's Road and wants Agatha to help her find the glory at the end. Agatha then uses the song and the myth for centuries to lure witches into believing that the Witch's Road exists, and all this simple ploy just to drain their power, something very easy that she can clearly do for centuries. One can also assume that this is how Agatha formed the relationship with Lady Death, because that's kind of the connection between the two there. And so here is my leading theory after that, was that maybe Death can see the future. Right, I'm assuming that's something that she can probably do.
Yeah, actually, I agree with you only because the conversation they have about Billy, about him that he can't exist, and the reason why she wants to collect him, almost like she knows what his presence will bring about. Like she knows what's going to happen. So yes, I do. I agree with you.
So maybe Lady Death, in a way, was able to realize that if Agatha can have her son, then she's going to, Lady Death is aware that her and her son are going to create this song together, and Agatha is later going to use that song to lure in probably thousands of witches throughout centuries to their deaths at that moment. So maybe Lady Death knew that, so she kept Nicholas Scratch alive long enough for them to develop the song, and then take him when he's no longer needed, and then Agatha was able to use that grief to then steal all of the souls and drain the powers of witches for centuries to come. And that was like a good tool for Lady Death to like have Agatha technically do her bidding.
Yeah.
So that's all a theory in my head that justifies some of the stuff that was happening in the flashback portion of this episode.
Yeah, and then you see her go through this remorse, and then we finally understand what the road is. But I felt like this would have been a better episode 8, and then we would have had this crazy blowout in episode 9, with eventually leading to her like the penultimate, the big moment. It could have been finding out that the road is a con. We could have ended episode 8 with that, and then I felt like her fighting death and all of that would have just held more weight in episode 9. And then we get and then she's not dead, because then we get Ghost Agatha. Like Casper Agatha is tagging along for the ride.
So after we get all that backstory, it cuts back to Billy's room, where we see a ghostly Agatha explaining the myth of the Witch's Road to Billy, with Billy realizing that he had conjured an actual Witch's Road, ultimately leading to the death of Sharon, Alice, and Lilia. This established how powerful Billy actually is, and how Agatha was surprised of an appearance of a door to the Witch's Road. Because I find all of that connectivity really, really interesting when you kind of lay it out that way, and puts a different perspective on multiple parts of this series.
Yes.
That kind of gives a lot of value in a rewatch now, because you can see it in a different context of like, Agatha's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. They set the show up to be enjoyable as a rewatch, which I think is better, and it makes the title of the show make more sense because it was Agatha all along. Like the Witch's Road was a lie. So in the first episode, she was not lying when she said there is no road.
Yes, you're right.
That was the very first thing she was telling the truth from the beginning. Yeah. There is no road.
Which is crazy to see how all this played out, and also. Let me finish up here because I do have more things to say.
Okay.
Billy attempts to banish Agatha forever, but ultimately helps Agatha move on from the death of her son. Billy closes the door to the Witch's Road forever and engraves Sharon, Alice, and Lilia's names on the ground. Agatha now becomes a spirit's guide to Billy, as the song suggests, as they start a new journey to search for Tommy, and that closes out the episode. But I just think that, like, to your point, there's so much, aside from the actual ending of this, which we'll get to in a second, the amount of detail in this story is insane.
Yeah.
To having wanted to then now have so much reasons to, you can go back to next Halloween season and rewatch this, and it can feel like a completely different show, have it under the context of watching it the first time. Like, you can find probably so many more things you didn't catch the first time with this. So I find that really enjoyable. But also, like, when I think they can no longer give more meaning to the song than they give us the last episode, and there's even more weight to the song. I would love to know, like, how much story details went into crafting, like, the perfect song in order to incorporate not like a very catchy song, but also this song is literally the foundation of this entire series. I don't think I've seen that in any other show that, especially from Marvel, but like that was such a unique thing to have a song be the foundation of an entire 9-episode show.
Yeah, and it made sense. I'm totally here for it. I'm just I felt like the execution of everything was great. It's just the ending is just like, the ending was just kind of okay. Like, I kind of wanted, like, I'm a little, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the ghost Agatha and Billy on the mission. Like, it's like, wasn't she this evil person, or shouldn't she be going to search for her son in the afterlife? So does that mean this is not a miniseries? Are we going to get a season 2?
Well, it's interesting because, with the Vision show also in development, I believe they said that, like, WandaVision acts as a season 1, Agatha All Along acts as a season 2, and now this Vision show will act as a season 3, kind of continuing this WandaVision storyline. Whether I think Vision is going to correlate with Agatha, I don't know.
But maybe we find Tommy in the Vision show.
Possibly, which is something that they did with kind of The Mandalorian, where they kind of within 3 different shows continued that Mandalorian storyline, which we saw Mando in both his own show and the Book of Boba Fett. But then also we have Ahsoka, which was introduced in in the Mandalorian, and then continued off into her own show. So maybe it's something that they're kind of working with in a way, where within these now 3 shows, we're going to continue to get one bigger story. I just don't know how much connectivity they're going to continue off of that, because Agatha All Along feels like a very different show than what potentially Vision is going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like, overall, I do agree with you. I think that between, like, episode 8 and 9, at least episode 8, it felt very much like, all right, we got one more episode to wrap everything up. We have a lot of storylines to cover. We're just going to give everybody 5 minutes, and then we're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it did feel, I guess that's a good way to put it. It did feel a little rushed.
And I felt the same way with WandaVision. I felt the same way with a little bit on Loki season 1, and I felt the same way with even Moon Knight. Like, I feel like we're building up, like, all the story building up, and then we have to quickly wrap it up in one episode.
Yes.
And I never really enjoyed that, and I feel like this is a common trait that I've seen with MCU shows. But then I was actually quite surprised to see what type of story they wanted to tell in the very last episode of Agatha All Along. And then so far, no one has stuck the landing more than Loki season 2.
Facts.
Like, that is the best ending of any MCU show so far, and like, that's a high bar to reach. But weirdly enough, I believe Agatha All Along is probably like either my second or third favorite show to come out of the MCU television slate. Like,
yeah. I think WandaVision, for me, it's probably Loki, WandaVision, then Agatha.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there. And like even Megan and I, we keep talking about some of the elements of the show. Like I still go back to like the detail of this song. Like these were the song and the composer and the songwriters of WandaVision and Agatha All Along were also the same people who wrote Frozen and Frozen 2. So like clearly they know music.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. And like to craft a song that's going to be the foundation of your show and like have every lyric be a title of the episode that holds weight to it, to have then your song be even different covers of the song. These songs are bangers, man. Like
why is this song so catchy?
yeah. Even their covers are catchy. Like I've been listening to this on repeat. It's crazy. And then you have like continuing to hammer down multiple meanings, like even for Alice, for having her cover where her mom was singing to be a protection spell for her. And then now you see this song is also a connection to Agatha and her son, that they created this song. And then in the midst of grief, she used this song to kind of, for her to gain power in a malicious way. But it came from a place of genuine love for your son. And then it continues on with this spell. Like there's so many different layers to this song, as well as having some certain phrases of the song be its own meaning within the context of the episode. Like, again, to me, I just mind blown of how this kind of played out and the level of detail that went into it. To me, it earns a lot of respect for like, the more I think about it, the more I keep finding more things about it. And even like great detail for them to like, they even talk about it. We later find out that, Agatha, that Billy created the Witch's Road based on his powerful nature. Mm-hmm. And now you see that he felt grief almost instantly, that he's like, oh my God, I killed Sharon, I killed Alice. Like that was all me. And then technically Lilia did sacrifice herself. Agatha did kill Alice. Sharon was the biggest casualty out of all of them because she wasn't a witch, and then she died very early. And then, as Agatha pointed out, he did save Jennifer, which I forgot to mention, that she was technically freed from the Witch's Road and from maybe his spell, and was able to get her powers back, and she kind of flew off. And so I'm curious to see her character.
Climbed out of the ground and just floated away. Whee!
So I'm curious if we're going to see her character come back in any way, shape, or form. But it was almost reminiscent to like, even Agatha said, you are the Scarlet Witch's son. I mean, technically, in a way, he was able to capture all of those witches under his spell, and have them go along the Witch's Road
unknowingly.
But then Wanda did the same thing with the town of Westview.
But she knew what she was doing.
Sorry?
But she knew what she was doing.
I thought at one point she didn't know, or maybe she chose to forget.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah. But yeah, and in a way that these two shows are very similar to one another, but done in very complete different ways. And also I love that it kept the spirit of WandaVision, that it was still kind of like doing like either parodies or homages to, instead of like WandaVision was more television eras, this was more like different eras of like the witches and like, what we see showcased in other horror movies and stuff like that. And so, yeah, and all around, this also just what a great Halloween show. Like,
yes.
This was a great show to get you into the spirit. And again, I was talking with Megan. I would easily dive back into this show next season to get into the mood and stuff like that.
It's great on a rewatch.
Mm-hmm. But there you go. That's our kind of a recap on Agatha All Along and the whole show. Congratulations to Marvel, because this took me by surprise, and I'm on board. Like, let's see Daredevil born again. If you can give me that level of storytelling, man, looking forward to all of this. But let's talk about another fantastic show that's over on the other streaming service.
Ooh, now this show just continually seems to impress me. It's amazing how good this show actually is. We're going to be talking about The Penguin, of course. We're going to be talking about episode 5 and 6. Episode 5 is titled Homecoming, It is... Sorry, I lost my place. Directed by Helen Shaver, who also directed episode 4, Santiani, which was, like, for me, peak Penguin, like a very peak point of the episode. Written by Brenna Gibson and Shane Ogbanya. Excuse me, fucked that up. Oz. So we come back. Oz and his crew, they kidnap Maroni's son Taj, and they give him an ultimatum. They're gonna exchange Taj for the Bliss, stolen by Nadia. At the same time, Oz has Victor. He starts looking after her mom. During the trade, a guard bribed by Oz tries to assassinate Maroni and Blackgate, which we later find out in the episode is unsuccessful, and that's actually the thing that helps him gets out. During the trade-off, Oz ends up killing Taj and Nadia by lighting them on fire, which we watch happen.
That scene was crazy. Like
I don't remember. Was that intentional? Did he intentionally kill them both, or was that right? I couldn't remember if it was like by accident. He was just like, fuck it, or if he like intentionally killed them both. Because
Taj was like telling her mom, like he was shaking his head as he was like going toward her, and he was also dripping in what we thought was water, but in actuality was gasoline.
Yeah,
and he just like lights the match, throws it on the ground from the trail that Taj left, and then ends up burning himself as he's hugging his mom.
Yeah, what a sad way. They embrace each other, and then you just watch them both collapse to the ground.
And I was watching a breakdown video, and they kind of were talking about like how they focused on the penguin's face, like Oz's face during that moment, and you can see that like how far on the deep end he really is. Like instead of like rushing to go protect the drug Bliss, he just sat there for a moment and watched it. Yeah, and he's like, damn, that's a bad dude. That just shows you like the level, how crazy and psychopathic he is. So the fire activates this chemical. It destroys most of the Bliss, and while Maroni survives his life, he escapes. Meanwhile, the little girl Gia is sent to the children's home, and then Sophia tortures Vidi until he basically decides to help her for her bid to help join the family. We get Julian Rush. He comes in. He's fallen in love with her, but she takes him under her wing, and then she rebrands herself as Sofia Gigante using her mother's name. And this scene when they're all in the table and they're all talking, and Vidi's like, yeah, we got to do this, and she literally just pulls a gun out and blows his head off. I totally feel like she did that. She kept him alive for that exact moment. Absolutely. As a notice to everybody is that she is not one to be fucked with. It's like, you have things to say against me. Let me help you decide. Let me help change your mind really quick. Yeah, and almost like she kept him alive for that reason, but also to get everyone together. Is like, hey, Johnny Viti is still alive after all this stuff. Let him get the band together. Let him get the crew back in. We're going to, that's a face that's familiar with. That's a face they can trust. Get everybody in the room. And then she's like, all right, we're no longer Falcones. There's Gigante now. And he's like, well, maybe not. And she goes, shut up. Boom. And it's like, all right, now. I think the way that she did it was so great because he was literally in the middle of like bitching about her, like objecting to her plan. And the second that he turns away, like without even skipping a beat, she just pulls her gun out and blows his head off. And I also think that is what, like, kind of a redemption moment, if I'm using the word even correctly, redemption. But it was a callback to when she was trying to shoot somebody in, like, a few episodes ago, and no one was willing to give her a gun. Yes. And instead it was, I forgot his name, but it was him who shot the other person instead. And it was Carmine. Carmine, that's right. No, not Carmine. It was Luca, Uncle Luca. Thank you. Yes, Uncle Luca. Like, she was asking for someone for a gun. No one gave it to him. Uncle Luca came in and shoot that person instead. And now she's in charge. She has the gun, and she has the power to shoot at will. And then he's like, all right, well, now that's over. Hey, everybody, stick with me. We're going to treat each other like family now. This is the new family. Here's the money. Take it. Let's work together. I like how she pours it on the table with his blood still pouring. Everybody's like, fuck it, I don't care. This money's still clear. Yeah. Money's money. Yeah. You can wash off the blood later. So then later we see Sophia. She's
she sees Maroni and he's grieving, and this is where she plots that they form their alliance. Oz is in a panic learning about Maroni's escape. He's losing this is a part I thought was really funny. Is like this is where we see Oz start to like really turn to this evil person he's going to be, because he's rejected by the people who he cares about the most, his lover and his mother. And then it ends with him finding his stronghold, where they eventually they restart their base of operation, and that's the end of episode 5. Overall, strong episode. I thought it was great. Sophia really setting herself as the new crime boss. We get the union between her and Maroni, and Oz like really resetting himself and setting himself apart to start his own thing.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that he's like in the sewers trying to like have his base of operations. Even though most of the drug was gone, he was able to save a few to then use that as a foundation to produce more elements, more product, so to speak. And yeah, he ended up losing his lover, and that was a very interesting scene because you can see he's very attached to the people in his life. He takes things very personally when they go against him. Like he kind of lashes out in a way when like he's rejected by his mother, but differently from when he's rejected by his lover when she didn't want to go with him. And he's also freaking out because he's like, Sal Maroni's out. I just killed his family. I'm trying to get this drug in a good place. And he's kind of scrambling at the moment. Victor has to come in and kind of save, make sure the mother's okay and get them all a crown point, and kind of using that as like a reset moment. Even there's a little bit of a time jump going into the next episode as well. But yes, there's like, I like where we ended the show. I think for me, it was really hard coming off of episode 4. It was such peak television that like watching the next episode, it's like, it's good. It just didn't hit the same highs. Like I feel like I'm still feeling the rush of episode 4, and then it's like, okay, it's like it doesn't hit, but it still hits though, but not as high as here. But like
it's a good one to come down on.
Right. Yes, a good one to come down on. But then, as we talk about episode 6, I think we go back just a little bit more up.
We're on that roller. I feel like we're on the roller coaster. Episode 6 is us going up the roller coaster hill. I feel like we're building up to that penultimate episode, because after this we got 2 more episodes left. So episode 6 is time.
The last thing, I don't know why, but as he was like in his like little cave, and he was like, "This is the new base of operations," and I was, for some reason, I really wanted to go, This is where we're gonna build all the product, kid. Wah, wah, wah. I was waiting for him.
This is our secret lair.
I was waiting for
I felt the same thing. Very Danny DeVito Batman Returns. Yes.
Because he's in the sewer.
Yes.
Batman Returns. I'm telling you, Ernesto, I know this show is very grounded and very serious, but man, I just want to like have him get hit in the throat or something and just like make the noise. Like I'm waiting for him to say do something.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, this is a tangent.
To be fair, I also thought the same thing. I thought it was. I had that moment. I was like, he's in the sewer, like the Penguin. Episode 6 is titled Gold Summit, directed by Kevin Bray, written by Nick Town. This is where we've seen some time pass. Oz is starting to grow his empire significantly. He's built this underground network where they're able to deliver the bliss and disappear back underground, reproducing and distributing the bliss in using the underground trolley system. Sophia Maroni, as their way of getting out there, is this a section of town, I believe they call them the Sullivans, where they spot them delivering the bliss and they kill them as a warning. This is where Oz is like, all right, well, we're going to just start giving the shit away so we can increase the demand, which is pretty smart.
Yeah, pretty smart. I agree.
Yeah. And then Victor is confronted by Squid, who is the guy from episode. We see him briefly in the episode before when he's taking care of Francis, and he's also from episode 1 when they tried to steal Oz's rims. He's an acquaintance and a drug dealer. He wants to let him join the operation, and Victor is very apprehensive about letting new people into the operation because he understands that this guy is a pusher, and that like even if we don't take him on, that he's gonna be a problem. Sophie and Sal, they break into Oz's apartment. Sal is obviously, he wants to annihilate Oz because he killed his wife and his son. So like their goal is to try to find somebody who cares about him. What's really funny during this scene, Sophia like grabs a club and like it's like, okay, here you go, like here, have some fun. And then you see what's funny is that like you don't see him again, but you hear him. Like you see Sophia goes into his bedroom, and this is where she actually discovers the photo of Eve and her drawer and her underwear. But in the background, so like you're getting this revealing moment of her finding out this person that he cares about. But in the background, you just hear Maroney just going, like just smashing shit and breaking shit in the background. I thought it was really funny because like he's getting his frustration out while we're getting this like key piece of information being revealed to us as the audience.
Yeah.
And what's really sad is like during this episode we see Frances, like her condition like really, really start to deteriorate. Like the power is out in Oz's part of town where they're staying, and you know he finds his mom sitting in the tub and she's been frozen in the water overnight, but she's not able to get out or help herself or have anybody help her. And then Oz has to make a promise to kill her because like even though she's forgetting everything, I think was really interesting, and this trait kind of translates to Oz is that she's so proud is that even if she's going to lose her memory, the one thing she doesn't want to lose is she doesn't want to lose her dignity, because she feels like she will lose that if she becomes a vegetable of her former self. I mean, and there's truth to that. There's a lot of people who think that. I mean, it's who doesn't want to be. Who wants to sit there and not be able to care for her and help her themselves? If there's no way for you to come back, you know.
And I know they even talked about this in the behind the scenes on the episode of how like later in that scene we see kind of Oz comforting his mother, and like he's applying makeup to her, and you see like this really close up of like his dirty hands kind of just like applying, all this beauty to his mom, like kind of looking at her through the mirror and be like, look, you're beautiful. Like, we're here to take care of one another. And like, it's just such a soft, tender moment that we get to see interaction between like the relationship he has with his mom, and they're kind of on a roller coaster ride as well, because sometimes his mom is very like, go fuck yourself, Oz, you're disgracing this family, and the next minute they're having like this really raw connection, and the whole thing is just really sad to kind of see kind of all this play out. So like you have like Oz trying to develop to be this crime boss, but then he's really vulnerable when it comes down to his mother, and we see a completely different side of him. Almost this is our version of kind of feeling sympathy for him in a way.
I mean, literally the episode before, he lit a mother and son on fire. Yeah, he literally burned these two people alive, like not one episode ago, and then here he is, like you just mentioned, like you just detailed, like being so loving and caring to his mother. But it just goes to show you that there is a human side of him. There is people he cares about, and what I think. This, and now like talking it out, them showcasing these elements really sets up for what's going to happen in the next episode, and what ultimately happens at the end of this episode. Because so during this whole time, there's no power at his house, so Oz is fed up with it. So he threatens to this corrupt councilman, who he grabs a pair of pliers and grips like the inner arch of his nose, and he like puts this guy through excruciating pain in order for him to get him to re-divert the power back to their part of town. And I loved how that was a slight inclination about the corruption in Gotham City within the politicians, that it's not just like him and the crime lords, that even the politicians are just as corrupt. That's all he had to do, and then we get the power back on. So Sophia during the same time, Sophia finds out who Eve is, and we get this beautiful scene between the both of them, where as she reveals, that they both reveal that Oz has been playing the both of them. Sophia has already known, but she, through telling her, Eve realizes that this person that she's supposed to have cared for has been screwing her over the whole time. And it ends with her telling where they can find her, just so that her and her girls can be safe, because that's her number one priority, is that she tells her that she told her girls to tell her because she didn't want any of her girls to get hurt, and that she tells them, I look out for them and they look out for me. And then that notion I find out in the later Inside the Gotham, the after episode, that this is the moment where she decided that she wasn't going to kill her because, like, even though she was like demeaning her when she came in about her lifestyle and like the way she has to adhere to men, but she has more family, a closer family than Sophia will ever have, because she mentioned something at the very end. She's like, she said something like, I don't even have that. But I think that they have this humanizing moment between them, but that leads to her finding out where Oz's family is. Basically, we later find out when the power comes back on, they had music playing, and then they don't even realize that Sophia has walked in on them, and he finds Oz's mom, and he finds Victor, and that's how the episode ends. Like she finds them. There's a crowbar, and she comes upon this seemingly beautiful moment between Victor and Francis, where she kind of has her memory back, and she's able to move around, and they're dancing, and then it's ended with this it's like very somber moment, because we know what's going to happen, that Sophia's going to capture them and take them.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy too, because even leading into the beginning of the episode, when like we're trying to find Oz's vulnerability, and Sophia just keeps saying he has no family, there's nothing that man actually cares about. And then it was then in that moment when Sophia eventually finds out where Oz has been staying, breaks into the house, and literally she's like, the power's back on. That's my boy Oz. My boy Oz is the one who put the power back on. And literally it's like, shut up right now. And like, you instantly know that she is going to use that to her advantage. And almost as we enter the penultimate episode, only one could assume we might see the death of his mom. And then we will now, probably into the finale, see a very unhinged Oz. And who knows what that looks like. I feel like that is the only way this show can go, to see, like, him become potentially a crime boss or his descent. I don't know where this show will go. They're doing so many things right now. But because also on top of that, we also have Oz on the other end of this. While Sophia is, finds out where Oz has been staying and finds out about his mother, Oz is over here making big moves of trying to get all the crime bosses together in these different zones and to make them work together, because he's been making separate deals with all of them. That's right. Over the drug. But he's like, well, look, I'm making deals with you. Why don't we just all work together and we can all make money together? Instead of me working secretly with all of you, I'm now telling you that I have been working secretly with all of you, but I want you all to come together so we can be one big crime syndicate for the most part. Yeah. And like kind of, work to all to our advantages. And he convinces them, but they crack open a beer and everything, has this very empowering speech and kind of wins them over. So as at that moment, Oz is on an extremely high right now, because he's been pushing products very successfully. And then literally the next scene over, we have Sophia alive, and that's that's terrifying. And we also have Victor, who's been going through his own tribes and tribulations throughout this episode, where he meets Squib. Yes, Squib was like, hey, I want a part of your crew, and Victor, not trusting him at all. He's like, no. He tries to go over to Oz, and Oz is distracted by things that's going on with his mom, and so he's like, don't worry, I'll handle it. Victor then tries to handle it, has a gun as a precaution, shoots Squib, feels very bad about it, and he's very traumatized about it. And then he goes over to Oz for more or less comfort, at least tell him what's going on. Oz instantly knows what's happening. Yeah. And he's like, you took care of that problem? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, and he kind of gives him a hug. And to me, this was like one of the most haunting lines in either the series or the show. Probably the episode. Maybe not the whole series. Sophia had some pretty dark lines in her episode. But at least in this episode, they have a hug, and he goes, it gets easier. And it's like, wow.
What? Does it? Is that what you're supposed to say?
It's like, I was like, damn, he was almost like, in a way, Oz realizes, and maybe Victor realizes in a way, is like, hey, that's just your first kill. It gets easier after a while. It's like, that's how far Oz is. And we can see Victor kind of going down that path now as well. Whereas like, now Victor has crossed a different threshold. Now he's killed somebody out of pure, either protection for himself or, out of revenge or whatever. But either way, that line is now crossed, and he's been over it, and now he has to live on with that. And so we'll see in his humanity whether he will continue down that road of killing people, or he's like really taking a step back on what he's been doing these last few months.
Yeah, I feel like it also was a moment for Oz to be kind of like a father figure to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, you're going through something that I went through. I can relate, and this is something that I can help you with.
Yeah, I mean, I think all in all, like literally the end of this episode, it was like the oh shit moment, and I was like, oh man, what a cliffhanger to leave this on. You can allude to what they're going to do, but entering the what's the word?
Penultimate.
Thank you. Penultimate episode. This show continues to fire on all cylinders.
Every single episode. Every single one.
Yeah. So very, very much looking forward to see how these last few episodes shake out. And again, arguably one of the best shows I'm seeing this year right now.
Absolutely. It's so good.
And also just coming off of Agatha too is like, you know what, Marvel and DC, we're doing good things together. We're doing a good thing. The nerds are happy.
Yes,
and I thank you.
Yes, I agree. High hopes for both companies to put out great content.
Yes, and and obviously this is a show that was produced by Matt Reeves. We see it has the DC Universe logo at the end of the show. It has the HBO branding. All good signs, man. Like, this show better be coming up on the next Emmy season.
100%.
Has to be.
100%. It better be.
It better be. The performances alone will get you there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to the last two episodes of The Penguin. This has been a fun ride so far as well. And that's it. That's our weekly watches on both Agatha All Along, as we wrap that up, and The Penguin. So now we're going to be diving into our spoiler review. The meat and potatoes of this episode, which is toward the end, is our spoiler review on Saturday nights. Ernesto, what were your thoughts of the film?
I think overall, I really enjoyed this film. I mean, I think it was chaotic. I kind of felt like it was like one scene that was continually happening, which I think added to the chaoticness of like, we need to just make it to 11:30 because that's when, as the poster says, that's when the revolution happens. But yeah, let's. What were your overall thoughts before we kind of dive into the?
Yeah, I was actually quite surprised. I've always enjoyed Jason Reitman's writing, especially coming from Up in the Air. But to me, this had a very much feeling like an Aaron Sorkin type of writing, where like very similar to like The Newsroom, if you watch that, or even I believe he also wrote Jobs. He wrote Jobs. It's like this fast-paced, like we are progressing forward into like this workplace environment where there's always things happening, and like the dialogue is what's getting here from point A to point B, and it's such strong writing that was able to really attract me into the episode. And I believe I missed this part because I think I was maybe 2 minutes away from the start of the movie. But did they open up the movie with it says the show doesn't go on when it's ready, the show goes on because it's 11:30?
Yes, I see. I don't know because I also walked in a few minutes late. I actually walked in. I walked in when they were on the street, and who's that actor? Who's that guy? Who's working the street? What is his name? Finn Wolfhard. When Finn Wolfhard is on the street, and the very first time when he's handing out the flyers, that's when I walked in. Oh,
then you actually walked in before I did, because I got into when they were walking down the studio for the first time that really long shot.
Yeah, so you're talking. So it's funny you brought that up. So that whole beginning was there's a one shot intro where we're going through the studio back and going around the whole studio and seeing everything. I read an interview. They wanted the original idea. They wanted the entire movie to be a one shot.
Wow.
But during COVID and during the writer's strike, it just became too complex for them to achieve. But I think, damn, that would have been really something If this whole movie was a one shot, and I think that would have been a fantastic. It was very ambitious, but I still really enjoyed. I mean, who doesn't love a good one shot?
I know, but also I think in the context of what the movie we did get, I'm almost happy that it wasn't a one shot, because I feel like there's some story beats that could not have been achieved emotionally if we were focusing on a continuous shot throughout the whole thing. I'm not saying it's not impossible, but I'm just saying that it needed a few cuts in there to invoke certain emotions that were throughout this throughout the film.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I agree with you.
But yeah, I really enjoyed to me, the strongest part of this movie was the writing, and then in addition to, like I mentioned earlier, Gabriel Luna's, no, that's not his name.
Gabriel LaBelle.
Thank you. His performance in particular as Lauren Michael was incredible.
Fantastic.
Like, he drew me in instantly. Like, his vibe and his, you can, like, he always invoked, like, there's so much chaos happening everywhere. And, like, I feel like within his facial expressions, you can physically see him almost at every moment breaking, but having to keep his composure to keep this train moving.
Yeah.
And
I totally agree. I
thought he was able to balance that, and within all the craziness that was going on around him. And like, even the poster suggests, like, he's literally carrying all this chaos on his back as he's trying to get to 11:30, and he just keeps saying, "I need to get to 11:30. I need to get to 11:30. Once we get to 11:30, we're good." But what happened within those 90 minutes was crazy. Also, this movie took place in real time. This movie is 90 minutes. So I remember I was watching an interview with Jason Reitman. He's saying that what was more appealing to him was not trying to recreate the opening of Saturday Night, but creating a film that was in real time. So he created a 90-minute movie that took place in 90 minutes before the first episode of SNL. So, and I think he was able to capture that really well. But yeah,
I feel like there's just a lot to appreciate in the because I was watching a bunch of different interviews. There was an interview with him and the DP of the film. So, like, they actually rebuilt the 8th and 9th floor as a 360 set and lit the entire set. That way, when they shot, no matter where you were on the set, everybody would be lit. So that it just allowed their shooting to be more free flowing. We talked about the one shot intro, like I loved all the complexity of the sets. Just like I can only imagine how challenging it was to get all that organized and to get with all the equipment going haywire, the lights. You have the lights falling in front of them during dress rehearsal. And I was reading in that article, they were saying that while that part didn't happen in real life, but I believe it was a camera that went haywire, that went driving off by itself. So maybe not. Wow. So, like, just to showcase that, like, we were having equipment failures like an hour before live. And then the score, they did a live recording of the score on set, and they performed everything live. How, like, that is incredible. So they're shooting the scene, and the band is playing the score while they're playing the scene. So I can only imagine as a director, like, or even an editor, like, you're in that mindset, and like now you've got the elements with you while you're looking at the shots. Like, how great! And I feel like it showcased in the film. Like, I feel like they tied together so well that it was able to pull that aspect was able to pull you in.
Yeah, and also the composer of the movie is John Baptiste, who played Billy Preston.
Yes,
who was the first musical guest in SNL. So John Baptiste was literally playing the character while writing the music in real time, in, like, live. So,
that's
like,
incredible.
He was performing it as well as composing it literally in that moment. And also, that name sounds familiar if you're watching or listening to us during the Oscar season. John Baptiste had a documentary called American Symphony, and he was Oscar nominee for the song that he wrote for that documentary, but he also won a Grammy as well. So, like, I can see his score potentially weaseling his way back into the Oscar conversation. But, like, it's just the idea of what he was able to do. And I was like, wait a minute. I know this person. That took me by surprise. Like, you're in it, you're writing it, you're doing all this stuff, all related to music. It was fantastic. And But yeah, there's so much detail. Even going back to that one shot that we were talking about earlier, they said that it took months to perfect it because every area needed to be blocked out. And like he said that they were working on this one shot 2 months before even the actors got there. So by the time the actors got there, they knew exactly where everything needed to be, and they just need to get the actors up to speed. Like they said that Jason Reitman, knew every inch of the entire set to block all these different shots, particularly with all the various long takes that they were doing. Like he knew that place up and down like there's nobody's business. And like I said, the blocking that they had to do for that particular one shot was insane. And so like, again, just how much detail they're willing to put into this film to kind of capture the Eps, kind of capturing the chaos and having really interesting ways of shooting that chaos. It just, there's a lot of love to go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was really, I thought we talked about the casting, all the casting was good, specifically like for Chevy Chase. Like I felt like, given everything that we've learned about him and, with Community and just like the fact that he's like at MegaCon every year, I thought it was really interesting. There was this line that I don't know who he was talking to, but he's like, I think he's like, tell me something about myself. He's like, you're going to be like a shell of what you used to be. Only company you're going to have is paid company. I was like, damn. It's like everybody going to see him at MegaCon every year. Like, I feel like he's telling him his future. Like, I almost wonder if that was a slight to him as a person. I felt like the movie just painted him in a very negative light overall.
You think so?
Yeah, I felt that way. I just anytime like they just made him look like an asshole, like the whole movie. Yeah, well, that's him and Dan Aykroyd. Like they did. Yeah. I felt like they did not paint them in positive lights in this film.
Speaking of which, Dylan O'Brien. First of all, I could not unsee Dylan O'Brien. Like I could not take Dan Aykroyd and say like, "Yep, that's him." It's like, no, you're Dylan O'Brien. But he did a great performance nonetheless. I agree. Like I thought he did a really good job of what he was doing. Like I think again, going back to everybody, I don't feel like they weren't trying to be the characters that they were. Like they weren't trying to be the embodiment of the real life counterparts that they were portraying, but instead capturing the essence of who these people would actually be in this scenario.
I feel like for me the highlight of this film. It's was actually with J.K. Simmons' role, Mr. Television, and it is a funny scene where he kind of like he shows his dick. And apparently, when he hosted the show, that was something that it wasn't on that night, but that was something that happened when he came on. Is like he showed his member to everybody. But I think his character I felt like looking at him was like looking at the old style of entertainment. Where you could just watch a guy being misogynistic towards women and dancing on stage, and that was considered entertainment. Because we spent a good couple minutes like watching this scene of him like doing weird moments and the girls doing like sexual things towards him, and like that was entertainment. And then we have this whole interaction between him and Chevy, which was like the old entertainment changing over to the new, him saying that he was going to be forgotten, and then he leads that up with him showing him a stick.
Yeah, and exactly to your point, even Jason Reitman said that J.K. Simmons' character was not there that night, but represented the idea of the older generation, Mr. Television, the old way that we view people in television. So, like, what's interesting was that upon doing research on this, I was more receptive, not receptive, but like I was expecting when I was diving into this and like diving more research into behind the scenes and stuff like that we were more getting into a fact and fiction. But then I kind of realized that it has nothing to do with fact or fiction, because this movie was never trying to be that. What this movie was always trying to be was capture the essence of what it would have felt like if you were on the opening night of Saturday night.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. Once I read there was an article talking about what was Lorne Michaels' involvement, and he said that he had lengthy conversations with them about things that had happened, and that they said that they didn't want it to be a beat for beat accounting of it, but they wanted to get the feel for what it was supposed to be. And then once I read that, I was like, oh, I'm not even going to worry about the fact or fiction in this moment. Doesn't care, but maybe this is the formula of what we need Like, you don't necessarily need to get everything right, but don't do outlandish shit. Or if you are going to do outlandish shit, it needs to have a purpose. Like, perfect example, the Mr. Television thing, showing his dick. Like, that is a crazy thing that happened. Now, while that did happen later on, it didn't happen that night. But it was important to showcase that for the exact thing of what we just mentioned. He used that as a storytelling element to tell his story, which I thought was really effective.
Yeah, and I was watching an interview with Jason Reitman, and he basically said that he interviewed every living person he could find that had anything to do with the opening night of SNL. So every living cast member, crew member, band member, including Lorne Michaels, like you just said. And he said, we are taking weeks of people's memories, events that happened in the weeks before, during, and after the opening night, and compiling it into a 90-minute experience. And what we wanted to do was to make you feel what it was like to be there opening night. And I think that is a great representation of what this movie is. Like, once I heard him say that, it all clicked in my head.
Yep.
It's like, oh, okay, so you were just trying to, again, he even said a 90-minute experience. Not a 90-minute retelling, not, beat, like we were saying, beat for beat of what actually happened, but like we're taking a whole bunch of stuff and like compiling it into this, not like, again, 90-minute experience to make us feel what it should be. And like, in a sense, like I saw this as a headline, like capturing the chaos of how it is leading up, like the 90 minutes leading into one of the biggest things on television over the course of 50 years. And that I have so much respect for. Yes. Because I also took this movie into a different light now. It's like, I'm not trying to figure out if this actually happened or not, but to like, did I feel something? Absolutely. I was also like, man, this guy can't catch a break. Everything just keeps falling apart. But like, in even the sense, they're going to go to air. Like, it's not the question of if or what or if or when. It's like, what's going to happen at the end. They're going to go to air. But seeing that, like, that chaoticness, that drive that they have, that passion that goes into it, that was the highlight of the movie for me.
I agree. And then you get the small elements, like how Chevy Chase became the weekend update guy, and that the line the joke that he uses, that he got, and how he got that other joke, that joke writer who he found was writing jokes for the other person, or even the other guy who he found working lighting for another show. Like, I just was here for all of it. Like, at a certain point, I just stopped caring. It was like, I wonder if that really happened like that. Like, I think I was just on board for it because it seems like he put so much care and attention into this project.
Also, I mean, again, in another interview, he kind of referred to it like a sports drama in a way, where like first of all, he said that he never considered this movie as a comedy, but more of like a thriller, and time is your villain. Because like time is what's not holding them back, but like that's what's holding down this pressure. Like all these things keep happening, but yet they still need to make it air in 90 minutes, Yeah. And he said that, again, I never saw this as a comedy, but there was this. I just lost my train of thought. That he. Well, I lost my train of thought on whatever I was saying, but I'm going to go back to something else that I'm reading now. So I apologize for that. But Reitman said that Lorne Michaels had no interest in the legacy. So we were going back to talking about how, like, what is Lorne Michaels' involvement in this movie? And he said that he was able to talk with Lorne Michaels a lot about, what was going on that night. But the thing is that Lorne Michaels, you realize, had no interest in legacy. There's no rear view mirror, always looking ahead. So aside from a couple of interviews with him, Michaels was never on set, and to his knowledge, has never seen the film either. So I thought that was interesting that, like, when there's a movie being made about you, you really don't care. And technically, Reitman had full range on everything that he wanted to do with this movie, and kind of gave him. You can tell this movie was filled with passion for like the revolution that kind of started between the old generation and the new generation. And I felt they were able to capture that really well. Man, I really wish I was remember what I was talking about. I was going on a tangent and then I just lost it. But
here, let's look at the box office numbers then. Maybe that'll help jog your memory.
Let's move to this instead. This movie, I don't have a budget. What was the budget for this movie?
All right, while you look that up, so Saturday night domestically did $9 million. just over $9 million. Internationally, I guess very small market, only made 37,000. So just over 9 million worldwide for the release of this. Domestic opening was only 270,000. Not a lot, but I don't think we anticipated. This is not a movie I think we anticipated to have a wide release like that.
No, I don't think so at all. And man, I'm not even seeing. Maybe if I type in movie, I try to look it up. Saturday Night Movie. I'm trying to. Yeah, still can't find the budget. Nope. Oh, here we go. There we are. Okay, the budget is anywhere between $25 to $30 million, and so it kind of rounded out about 9 million. So technically, there is a little bit of a loss there. But also, I mean, between 35 and 25 to 30, not a lot to make this movie. No. But yet there's so much passion around it. I'm sure a lot of it had to do with rebuilding the sets. And another interesting aspect that I found really cool about this movie was that he had about over 80 background actors that he put them through this boot camp. And they were there before the main actors came into the, and he made all his background actors learn the trade that they're portraying. So all around them, it made him feel like they're actually working a camera, or they're actually putting bricks on the ground, or they're actually lighting things, or they're actually doing this and that, to kind of not only give the authenticity to the film, but also to the actors, because it felt like you were on a real life set of SNL. And I thought that was kind of really cool, because it really brought it together. Like, there was never a moment where I felt like it really brought everything together in a way, and in something like that. Yeah. That, again, continues to showcase the level of detail that was willing to put into this. A lot of respect for that too. And yeah. Also, Willem Dafoe killed it. Always.
He's such a character. Anytime you put him in anything, he has like this over the topness, but you're willing to accept whatever he gives you. Like, he's so good at what he does.
Yeah. I was also interested to see, like, even Jim Henson's role into SNL that was played by Nicholas Braun, who also played Andy Kaufman, by the way. He was supposed to be another actor, but they bowed out last minute, and so they ended up giving him both roles in the essence of SNL, because they explained that in the interview that, like, well, why not? People portray other characters all the time on SNL. Why can't they do the same in this movie?
It worked.
It worked. Yeah, it worked really well. And I thought it was interesting, because I literally somewhat recently watched the Jim Henson documentary that's on Disney Plus, and that's when I learned that Jim Henson, like, I was not unaware of Jim Henson's history, so I was unaware that he had any involvement with Sesame Street, and actually left Sesame Street to continue to form what the Muppets were. Eventually got himself on SNL to be like a secondary act, but that was also part of the overstuffing that we saw later in this show and in the film as well. That there were too many things that were happening in the show, and that it was showcased in the documentary that people like were making fun of him for working with puppets, and like how seriously he was taking it, and how they did hang Big Bird in his dressing room, and like in the documentary it showcased that he really did not like his time on SNL.
I would imagine,
and I think that was definitely showcased in the movie as well. Like, that definitely was in tandem, and kind of his disdain for SNL eventually led him to have his own successful show with the Muppets later on in his career.
Yeah.
So I thought that, like, even though his role was brief, I thought they did a really good job of showcasing that. And as I said that, I remember what I was going to talk about. Okay. Going back to Lauren Michaels' character, I actually teared up toward the end of this movie, going back to the passion that he put into it, because when everything seemed all hope was lost and everything was riding against him, like, there was a moment where he had to showcase to Willem Dafoe's character of, like, I'm pulling the plug on this. And he's like, no, I got it. This is what the show is. He's like, what is the show? And throughout the whole movie, there was like, I don't know what the show is. And like, you couldn't explain it. And the only way you can explain it is if you show them. If you show them what the show is going to be. And he had people put on the different sketches that he was going to have throughout the episode. And that was the moment. That's like, oh, people are laughing. People are having a good time. Like, people are enjoying this. And then it was in that moment where, like, in the final 15 minutes, they were kind of like working together, all having a common purpose. There was so much chaos that was happening throughout this entire film. But yet in the final acts, that's when people started working together. That's when the magic started to form. Yeah. And it does, like, that, like, I remember our time at Beyond the Credits. Like, I'm not saying it was as chaotic as that, but we had no idea what we were doing. We still don't know what we're doing.
Yeah,
but
figured it out. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, like, there was stuff that happened in the last minute. There was happening stuff during the show. Half the time we don't even know what we're doing right now. But it doesn't matter. We're doing the thing.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. Because at the end of the day, as they showcase here, which I love this line, the show doesn't go on because it's ready. The show goes on because it's time to go on. It's 11:30. That's when the show needs to go on, and so we're going to put out whatever's out there. And I loved how, like, everyone was kind of working together at the end. And, like, there was so much chaos even with the board. He's like, I don't know what show we're going to be putting on. And then, like, literally the whole board went down because he pushed everything down on the ground. And then he put together, he's like, is that our show? That's our show. It's like 10 minutes before the show.
Isn't that crazy?
It's nuts. And, like, you see, like, even the union workers were unwilling to help with the brick. And then we see them as like, all right, guys, let's help him. Like, he's been working here the whole, like, hour and a bit. And, like, even them coming together. Because I think at the end of the day, they all saw the vision. They all saw Lorne Michaels' vision of what this could be. And in a way, even though we don't know what they're doing, they kind of want to be a part of it. And they want to see it succeed. And now 50 years later, look at them now.
Yeah.
You know, and that, I think, to me, that brought a tear to my eye of, like, that's where creativity and passion, that's what it comes to. That's what you get out of it.
It definitely showcases through what Jason Reitman would, like, the care and love he put for this project.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think wrap up. If you have anything else to kind of add to it,
no, I just got I have my final thoughts, but that's it.
Yeah. So what's your final thoughts?
Just that this movie's viewed as like a bomb, but I think that it's quite great. I think Jason Reitman really put together something special. I think it showcases just technically, I think it's just a beautiful film. Just what he was able to achieve and the different elements and aspects he put into it, like just the way they lit the stage, rebuilding 2 floors of set and completely lighting both sets is, I think, what attributes to the higher budget of this film. But I think it's warranted, and I think what he did was fantastic. I think for me, I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like, even like, I think you said it best in multiple episodes that we've done, is like, if a movie can, like, either inspire you, or in this case is like, when I want to learn more about the thing after I watch the movie, then I think the movie did its job.
Yeah.
Of like, and like in your case, sometimes you often talk about franchises where not rewatching the older stuff, but if the movie can make you want to go back and rewatch what came before or after it, then the movie did a good job of being its standalone, a great movie to want you to go back and learn more about it. And in this particular case, this made me want to do the research.
Yes.
Like, I was like, there's so much in this movie. Like, it started off as like, is this fact or fiction? But later, I learned more about the creativity that went into this movie. I learned more about the passion that went into this movie. Kind of, you had a passionate filmmaker as Jason Reitman wanting to kind of recreate the essence and the capturing the chaos that came from, building Saturday Night. That was poured into the show, into the film. Like, the passion that he had for the show was kind of the foundation of the passion that Lorne Michaels had for making Saturday Night. Mm-hmm. And so, like, that is what I got from it. And you can see all these different people kind of working together to, as the poster suggests, starting this revolution of pushing the old generation out and bringing in a new generation to television screens that people have never seen before, musically, comedically. Like, it was like, it made careers. Like we said, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, John Belushi. Like, even John Belushi's role in this movie was like, they know that he was an actor and a comedian that needed to be in this, but he was unwilling to sign the contract up throughout the whole movie. It wasn't until like the very end where they created suspense of whether or not he was going to be in this. And I think this is kind of crazy, like some of the real world aspects of it. The only reason why SNL exists is because Johnny Carson wanted more time off. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to air reruns during not only the weekends, but during the week. And because NBC felt it was threatening, that he was threatening them, they wanted to retaliate by bringing on new shows to show that they didn't even need Johnny Carson. But also, even Johnny Carson in the movie called Lorne Michaels saying, I hope you fail, so I can win, basically. and end up backfiring on everybody, whoever wanted them to fail, because it ended up just, being, a huge success after all this.
And still is. I mean, still considered one of the best TV shows. Although I feel like it's not the same. I mean, it's definitely not the same.
Absolutely.
I feel like it has morphed into something else. Like, because whereas the original Saturday Night Live or Saturday Night was like an underdog comedian show, whereas now it's looked at, this is where like the top comedians go. They go on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think over time it has changed. It's been 50 years. Yeah. So, like, it can't stay the same forever. It evolved. Yes, exactly. But, like, it's still, people still go to it. Like, it's still career makers.
Correct.
Like, if you look at the current cast now, you see eventually, if given the right opportunities, they can come out to be their own stars themselves. Just like Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, and John Belushi became stars, we see that later happen with Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler. Like, these are career makers, and they're still... This show is still an avenue to create success stories for comedians. And that has hold true throughout its entire run. And it will probably continue to do so until the show, may or may not ever leave the airways,
Yeah, true.
So I love so many things about this movie. I can't wait to rewatch it again. Because I really do want to rewatch this again. And yeah, 4 out of 5 stars for me. I know one of the reasons
4 out of 5 or 4.5. Sorry, I was going 4.5.
I'm sorry, I said it so fast. 4.5 stars. For me.
Okay.
Yes. And I also, we're keeping a close eye on the award season. We are now, the summer's over. We're in November now. It's coming into the conversation, and so
it's Oscar bait season.
It's Oscar bait season. And at one point, this movie was in the running, but now it feels like that it's slowly slipping away. It's not out of the conversation just yet, but like more movies are taking precedent over others. And it could be even some of the box office numbers. A lot of people drove to go see this movie. But hopefully it has the resurgence once it hits video on demand, once it hits streaming. Hopefully there's a good campaign for it, because there's so much to love about this movie.
I agree.
Whether it's the way that it was directed, the way that it was, the performances. Like, again, Gabriel LaBelle, he should be nominated out of anybody. He killed it in this role.
I agree. I mean, I forgot that it was an actor. Like, I felt like I was watching a young Lorne Michaels.
Like the cinematography, the script. Like, this is an all-around Best Picture nominated film.
Yeah, I agree. I'm inclined to agree with you.
Yeah. It would be really sad to see if this movie doesn't get any recognition. Because honestly, the way that I felt about this movie, in a weird, strange way, was the same way I felt about The Holdovers last year.
I could see that. There is room for a conversation there. Whereas, sure. like the feels like where Holdovers is much more of a softer feel. This is much more of a comedic, more chaotic feel.
Yeah, definitely more of like a balancing act.
Yeah.
That how many things can go wrong. And even you have some of their sweeter moments, like him talking to John Belushi, even him talking to Rachel Sennet's character, who was he was playing like is either his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife.
It was his wife. It was his wife at the time.
It was his current wife?
Yeah, and then they eventually get divorced later. I mean, but she was having an open relationship with Dan Aykroyd that he knew about, apparently.
Yes. And I think the overarching theme throughout this, like for her character, was, at least for their relationship, even though they had a fantastic working relationship, they were trying to figure out what last name he wanted to use, she wanted to use. Because I think, to your point, they were in the midst of going through like a divorce. And like they knew that they couldn't work out with a relationship, but they knew they still worked well together. Yeah. And you can see that what was also kind of compelling was that maybe their relationship failed, but their passion for this did not. And they were able to put like maybe their disagreements aside for the passion, the love they had for Saturday Night. So that's what I was able to get from that story as well. And then also the building to tension at the final moments. Willem Dafoe was like, "Is it rerun or tape or live? Tape or live?
Live."
I thought what a perfect way to end it as well, with Chevy Chase going live from New York. It's Saturday night, and then credits.
Yep.
perfect way to end this film. Yeah, hopefully this gets some award attention because it really, really deserves it. I was like smiling at the end of this. Like this is a great movie.
Yeah, it was fun. It was great film.
So there you go. That's our spoiler review on Saturday night. Hopefully we'll be talking about this film again when it comes to award season. But there you go. That's all the show we have for you guys this week. We really do appreciate you guys listening to us. Ernesto, tell our listeners what they can look forward to next week.
Next week we are going to be reviewing the Tom Hanks and Robin Wright film from the writer, director, and stars of Forrest Gump. Here, Robert Zemeckis' new film. Yeah, we're going to be reviewing it. Hopefully, we're going to have a guest to come on. Should be a fun time. It'll be good. This is another one that is kind of in the conversation for the Oscars, but maybe not so much anymore. But I think it's at least worth the watch.
Yeah, there definitely has an interesting approach technically that we'll dive into next week about this movie, which has a lot of people intrigued in general. And Robert Zemeckis has always been the one to experiment a lot with his films.
But
so,
I'm okay with that. Like, all films don't have to be the same. Like, give us some different. Like, give us a family story, but give us an element. Like, he almost like restricted himself in this.
Almost. Yeah. Like how much story you can tell when your focal point does not move, your camera does not move, so the story has to do all the movement. And it's an interesting idea, something that's worth exploring. That we go into next week. So I look forward to having your conversation. And also, this is the first time that the writer, director, and the stars reunite together since Forrest Gump. So technically, history shows this is a recipe for success. Whether that is or not, we'll see.
Remains to be seen. We shall see.
But anyway, if you want more from us, you can always follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok at Box Office Bingers, our X and Letterboxd page at Box Office Binger, and our Threads and Instagram page at Box Office _Bingers. The fun does not stop here. Excuse me. The fun does not stop here. It continues on our social media channels. I need water, apparently. So we're going to end this show now. I'm going to get some water. We'd like to thank each and every one of you for listening to us and watching us each and every week. Really do appreciate it. Come back for more movie fun. You're not going to regret it. And for that, I've been your host, Matt Diaz.
Been Ernesto. I forgot who I was.
That's Ernesto Santos. Nope. That's Ernesto Santos.
And I'm Ernesto Santos. See ya.